22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
Check 1 2, check 1 2.
And are not afraid to say it.
And are not afraid to say it. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show. Every Sunday, usually 6 to 8 on InTheMixRadio.com. Today we are doing the pre-primary edition, a special edition. We're on 1 hour earlier, 5 to 8 this week. We have a strong lineup of candidates running in the primary. On the first hour, we have New York State Attorney General Democratic candidate Tish James. In the second hour, we have State Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins, the highest ranking minority female in the state. And for the third hour, we have State Senator Alexandria Biaggi, who is running against Senator Klein. So we have a strong lineup for you this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. What's up, Michael Bullock? What's up, Louise Cherico? I know other people will be tuning in later. I just want to welcome everybody. Oh, if you haven't seen already, before I forget, the September issue is out in the streets right now. Make sure you copy a copy. And we also have a T-shirt, a special limited edition T-shirt of the front cover, available for $25. Anybody interested in buying this shirt, hit us at blackwestchester@gmail.com. Anywhere you want to go, anywhere you want to go. So, you hear me talking in the background. We have the lovely Lorraine Lopez, our co-host, and we will be joined by Dr. Robert Baskerville in a little bit. Let me bring Lorraine into the shot. There she goes. She is on mic 3.
Hi.
Your mic is on now since you moved from your regularly scheduled seat. Would you like to? Would you want to move again?
No, I'm going to move here. I
okay.
just turned down the Facebook page for the guests.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Hello. 1 minute, Tish is here.
Okay, so we're going to get into that. So, what have you been up to this week, Lorraine? What have you been up to this week?
Oh, well, I don't know how some of the folks are going to take this, but
Donna Nolan said hello, Lorraine.
Donna Nolan?
Yes.
That's my partner. That's exactly what I was going to talk about.
Okay, so talk
Well,
about
Donna Nolan and I are putting together. We don't have the date yet. The date should be coming. Today's Rosh Hashanah. By the way, happy Rosh Hashanah to all my Jewish friends out there. We're putting together an event for Marcus Molinaro and Julie Killian. and it's going to be held in Yonkers. They asked if we can do this, just a meet and greet. They're covering all the expenses, which is awesome, so that the folks can come in for free. We don't have to.
Right.
You get more folks when you come in for free than when you have to pay $50, $60, $75, $99
Absolutely.
for an event. So I'm very appreciative that they're doing that, actually. The emails went out yesterday. We should be getting a response within the next day or two on what day it's going to be. But I would love to invite everyone to come, even if you're not a Republican, which most likely the majority of the folks that listen to this radio show are not Republican. But it's a good thing just to come and watch and just listen to both sides. Get involved in the process. This could be a start of a new career for some folks even. So I'll be touching base with everybody. Donna will be touching base.
So just for the listeners, the two candidates, what are they running for? What are they?
Marcus
re-election?
Bellinaro is running for. He's the Dutchess County executive, by the way, currently,
Okay.
which is a huge deal,
And
as
he's
it is.
and he's running
And
for
he's
what?
running for governor.
Oh, I didn't know there was another governor candidate. Okay. the
Oh yeah, he's
Republican,
running
okay.
the Republican line. Yeah, and Julie Killian is running for lieutenant governor in the Republican line.
Okay, so since they don't have a primary,
And he's 1 point behind Cuomo right now in the polls.
since they don't have a primary, we have to have them on in October.
Well, we're
Okay.
booked.
Oh, you already
We're booked till
considered-
October.
okay.
Yes.
Oh yeah. So we have to have them on. That's a good look. So next week we're gonna have. We finally gonna have the appearance. He's gonna actually
yay.
grace
Oh,
our presence.
hey,
The mayor of
hey.
Yonkers, who has not come on this show in the 4 years that it's been on in his city, will be here.
But you don't
in
have to
person.
say all that.
In person, it's a big deal that he's coming.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. He hasn't been here. He's one of the few people that haven't been here. So he'll be here. We'll be talking
Mayor
about a lot of
Spano's
stuff.
going to be in the house.
And then the next week, I think we have Joe Pinion coming back.
Joe Pinion's coming back on the 30th.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
and
so-
Joe Pinion is running for
Shelley Myers' former assembly
Assembly.
seat.
Assembly. As a matter of fact, Joe Pinion is one of Donna Nolan's friends.
Ah.
Yeah.
So Donna, Lorraine, I just gave her the copies of the paper to give to you, so you will have copies of the paper.
Oh, yes,
yes.
because he got the story about your son, Michael.
Right. Shout out to Barry Magui, a big strong supporter of the show, Yonkers Fire Union president. Shout out to Caitlin Gleason. Shout out to Jesse Van Loo, Peter Senor Guapo Davison, Paul Anthony Cuesta. You're welcome.
Paul.
You're welcome, Donna. And is there anybody I missed? Omi Medina. So, shout out to Omi Medina.
Omi.
And,
Omi.
and- and-
Tell
and
Omi you
also-
got the paper.
And I also gave Lorraine the copies for you too, Lorraine, Omi. So when she sees you, she has the copies for you. And D. Wilson, good evening. AJ Woodson and Lorraine Lopez.
Hey, what's up, D?
What's going on, D? So, we got a nice strong lineup. I wanted to make sure, as always, Thursday is the primary. It is not on a Tuesday, I believe, because Tuesday is September 11th. I believe that's why they pushed it back. I'm not exactly sure. But the important thing that is Thursday. This Thursday coming up, the 13th. We try to bring as many candidates that are going in the primary as possible up to this point so that you can make informed decisions at the ballot box. We don't tell you who to vote for, but we try to, at least you'll be more informed on the candidates when you go to the box. There's several important elections. New York State Attorney General is a very important election. For all of y'all that only vote on presidential elections, the New York State, and for all of y'all complain that nothing goes on when there's the Eric Garner case and the Attorney General don't step in and the Attorney General doesn't do anything for the black community, as far as things in the black community, this is a very important race. So we've had one candidate on, we're having another candidate on, and you need to check them out and listen to them. You need to go out and vote in that election. Andrea Stewart Cousins is running for re-election of her seat, and if I think if they need 1 or 2 more seats, and then she will be the
One more seat.
She'll be the Senate. What is it? The majority leader, right?
Yes.
The Senate
She'll
majority
be the leader of the House.
She'll be the leader of the, and that's
First time in history.
First
First female, first African
female, and first
American.
first African American female. So that's definitely history making. And then we have
First female, not first African American.
okay, first African American
Yeah,
female is what I
somebody that
said.
knows what's up.
No, I said first African American female. That's what I said.
Because Edna, we said the first.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, it's the first, and it could be history making, and especially after all that BS she had to go through with the IDC, I'm definitely hoping that they come out and support her and she gets those seats.
Well, hopefully they'll vote for the next candidate you're going to bring up.
Yes,
Bada bing.
right. And then for those, because we got a lot of people that listen throughout the country or because we're online.
Yes.
There are a lot of important Senate seats, congressional seats. And if you're paying attention to what's going on the national level, we really need, if the Republicans stay in power, Trump will run. He'll just continue doing what he's doing, and they have no intention on stopping him or checking him. And we definitely need some checks and balances. So there's a chance for the Democrats to actually gain some important seats. So it's important overall that you vote in this election. And now we have our next guest entering the stage. For y'all who saw the candidate forum that Damon hosted, he's not here today. This is I call you Tish all the time.
It's Letitia, but
it's Letitia. Okay,
Tish.
I just want to make sure because I don't like you don't mispronounce a woman's name. You got to make sure you say her name right. So I always just say Tish. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, everybody knows you as Tish.
Everybody knows me as Tish.
You have one name like Aretha, like you just say Tish.
That's
everybody
right.
knows
That's
Tish.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right.
Everybody knows Tish.
Tish, Beyonce. Yeah.
And the first time I saw you, right, the first time
Cardi B, Tish.
the first time I saw you was at Mount Vernon when you were when a friend of yours was being sworn in, Lisa Copeland, as city councilwoman,
exactly.
and you came and you spoke for her.
That's right.
Her
That's
and
right.
Andre Wallace were being sworn in, and you
That's
spoke
right.
for her.
That's right.
And that's I think the first time I've actually spoke
right.
to you.
That's right.
In this Mount Vernon City Hall
That's
that day.
right. That's right.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, and
Thank you.
first time let's give you an official round of applause. And if you can just pull the mic closer, because we make sure it moves. You pull it close. Yeah, you pull it to you, it moves. And so I want everybody to make sure they hear what you say.
Excellent.
So, Tish James, first question. First off,
Yeah.
now you are the Democratic nominee.
Correct.
Okay.
And she's got endorsed by everyone from Cuomo all the way down to
Yes,
City Council.
I don't know if you saw, but we just ran that on blackwestchester.com, and it showed like all your endorsements and stuff.
Thank you.
Because I forgot
appreciate
who endorsed you, the latest endorsement, but we ran that, and we ran who the other who else endorsed you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So why are you running now? You're the current I forgot to say you're the current
Public advocate.
Public advocate.
Yes.
Now let's start there. For people that don't know, because we try to educate people,
So the public advocate.
what
of
does
the
the public advocate do?
public advocate of the city of New York is second in line to the mayor of the city of New York.
Okay.
If anything should happen to Mayor de Blasio right now, I would become mayor for the next 6 weeks until there's an election.
Now that I did not know.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
quite
yeah.
impressive.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so the public advocate is checks and balances on the mayor and the city council. I preside over the city council. I have the ability to introduce legislation, and in fact have introduced and passed more legislation than all previous public advocates combined. That includes Bill de Blasio, who was the public advocate before he became mayor,
Right.
Mark Green, and Betsy Gotbaum. And the last legislation that we passed was groundbreaking, banning salary history.
One of our listeners said, "Can you just move the mic closer, or
Sure.
just speak into the mic?" They're saying.
Banning salary history,
Okay.
because I believe in equal pay for equal work, and the feminization of poverty is real. And so in New York City, they can't ask you about your previous salary, and they have to pay you based upon the value of your work. As opposed to,
That's huge.
yeah, because and we want to make sure that it's statewide law. So I want to codify it on a state level, and that's why one of the reasons why I'm running for Attorney General. So that was one bill. There's a number of other bills, but that's the one that I'm most proud of. We led the way to divest from gun retailers. I led the way to divest from fossil fuels. I led the way to divest from hedge fund managers who were investing in what they call underperforming real estate, which basically
Yes.
is real estate where poor people live, and
Yes.
they invest in those properties and then they evict those people. We stopped that practice. I have had, my office has handled over 32,000 constituent complaints, individuals who walk through our doors, without fancy lawyers and without fancy lobbyists, but individuals oftentimes with their problems in a plastic bag. And we've been really active as a public advocate of the city of New York, and we have used litigation as a means to get things done. I've sued the mayor of the city of New York at least 10 times, even though he was my friend and my ally. I sued him on behalf of disabled children, autistic children, behalf of parents, behalf of senior citizens, tenants, people in public housing. I sued the mayor, I sued the governor on behalf of children in foster care.
How'd that go?
Well, we settled.
Okay.
We settled the case, and we've seen a lot of reforms at the Administration for Children's Services, because I believe that the law can be an instrument for change. That's what I was taught at Howard University. The law should be an instrument for change, and that the law is sometimes a sword, can be used as a sword, and sometimes as a shield. And that's really critical at this pivotal moment in the history of this country, where you've got an illegitimate president who's racist, who's a sexist, a misogynist, who's got a problem with individuals who are different. He's Islamophobic, we got to we have to
he's
stand
everything
up.
phobic.
He's everything.
Yo,
And so,
Who?
I said he's everything phobic.
This is true. The president.
Trump.
Oh,
You
Jesus
just put
Christ.
the phobic's at the end of it. He's
Yeah.
whatever's in front of it. He's that.
So we got to stand up and we got to fight back, and given the fact that our ancestors died and bled for the right to vote, we can't sit idly by and sit on our laurels and not vote. And
Now-
so this Thursday, you got an opportunity to demonstrate that.
Now, you said you sued the governor.
Yeah.
So, that means if you like the governor now, if you become attorney general, the
Yeah.
governor would kind of be your boss, or you would
No.
you would answer to the governor.
No, the people are my boss.
Okay. Well, it means if you sued him, in other words, you would push back against.
Oh, sure, without a doubt.
You wouldn't rubber stamp just
No.
because he's.
Listen, as long as there are children in public housing in Buffalo with lead poison, I'm going to sue them. As long as there's children in NYCHA that are suffering from lead poisoning, given the conditions in public housing, I'm going to sue the mayor. As long as there's environmental degradation, environmental racism, I'm going to sue any companies that dump upon people of color. As long as you got homelessness all throughout the state, as long as you got a problem with discrimination against Muslims and discrimination against black people, discrimination against Latinos, discrimination against disabled individuals, I'm going to sue. I stand here in the spirit of Shirley Chisholm, unbossed and unbought, and I stand here because I know who I am, and I know the fact is that marginalized and vulnerable populations are struggling in this state, and then what they need is someone who's going to speak truth to power. So be it the president, or be it the governor, or be it any mayor in the state, I'm going to use the law to be the great equalizer and to demand justice.
As you can see from the paper in front of you, this issue, we have that in
Right here.
every corner. That's on that runs on every issue. We are unbought and unbossed.
She's
we
my
don't. Yes, yes.
And so is Barbara Jordan.
Right.
Yeah, those are Barbara Jordan. Was at the, was one of the members at the impeachment hearing for Richard Nixon.
Yes.
And so history is repeating itself.
It's interesting. I watch a lot of MSNBC, CNN, even Fox, because I like to see the different versions of the story.
Yeah.
You know?
You always need to know what your enemy is thinking.
Absolutely. Now, and I did ask that question for a while because on the national level, what we're seeing is people being loyal to the party and not to the people.
Right.
So that's why I asked that question. Now, I want to. I read a lot of things, and people sometimes can't make heads or tails of what they read, so I'd like to give the candidates a chance to speak on it. Now, I know you were at the NIPAN in January. You were at the NIPAN.
Yes.
I know
It's
you
a
was
conference.
and Nina Turner was there and
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
And but then I read somewhere the Albany Union Times and I think the New York Times said that you snubbed the Working
Families
Party,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't understand because
Yeah.
it looked like they were supporting you all the way back then, and then you snubbed them. So explain that for the people.
So what happened was when this when this vacancy became available, right? I had 2 weeks to secure the Democratic nomination. Not the Working Families Party nomination, but the Democratic nomination. 2 weeks. Work 62 counties.
Wow.
Work all these delegates and get their support. Speak to a lot of elected officials. My focus was on securing the Democratic nomination.
Right.
And there were individuals who had some issues with WFP for whatever reason. And so I just decided I had to make a decision, had to make a choice. And so I made a decision. It was difficult. And sometimes in the business that you're in, you got to make difficult decisions. As a public advocate, difficult decisions. City council member, difficult decisions. Attorney, difficult decisions. As an attorney general, difficult decisions. And as a candidate, difficult decisions. And I made the difficult decision. I would pursue just the Democratic nomination at this time because there were so many questions and issues and differences with with the Working Families Party. Even though there is no sunlight between me and the WFP, I am the face of the WFP party, the Working Families Party, and will always be that. And I look forward to being on their line come November.
Okay. Now, the reason I did ask you, another reason I've seen, and once we announced who were going to be in the show, some people from NIPAN and some people from the Working asked me, they were like, well, we supported her, she turned her back on us, and I wanted to, I know there are candidates that have had both lines. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I was just like.
But that was when there was an open primary, and that was when you had a period of time to secure the support and try to resolve differences. I had 2 weeks, 62 counties, hundreds of delegates, hundreds of elected officials. Because this happened like
a lot.
No one was expecting it. I was, as you know, considering running for the mayor of the city of New York. That was my focus.
That's what we thought you were going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the word.
That
was the word.
It's the truth. I was thinking about running for mayor, and that's what I was working on. And then I had no idea that, the former attorney general would resign.
Right.
And so I was literally at dinner when it happened. And when the appetizer was served, I saw the article and everybody went, oh. And then by the time dessert came around, he resigned.
Right,
wow.
right.
And I had 2 weeks.
Right.
2 weeks. And the road to victory was the Democratic Party.
Right.
You've been an assistant attorney general, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So I've already been in the job.
She's got experience.
So,
I've already been there.
So speaking about Snyderman stepping down, before he stepped down, I know you can't speak, and I've asked your opponent last week. I know you can't speak to specific cases.
Yeah.
But one of the last things he did before was bring charges on the mayor of Mount Vernon.
Yes.
And then the mayor challenged the authority,
the constitutionality
of the attorney general's office to be able to prosecute him.
Yeah. He challenged the authority of Barbara Underwood, who was acting.
Well, that too, but he first charged that the attorney general's office didn't have the authority, and then she didn't have the authority because she wasn't elected by the legislature, which she then was.
Yes.
So I just wanted to speak about the authority of. I know you can't talk about the case, but people that are listening from Mount Vernon have been hearing so much about what authority that office doesn't have. So I would like you to speak about the authority that the office does have.
So the office of Attorney General is codified in law and in our Constitution, in the state, and it has a wide range of responsibilities. And what people need to know is 60% of what the Attorney General does is not sexy work. It's you represent the state of New York. You're the people's lawyer. You represent all state agencies. You also have the power to work with the controller of the state of New York. They have this agreement called Operation Integrity.
The integrity unit or
integrity
something.
Unit, where they're basically trying to deal with corruption. And we've had a problem with corruption in the state of New York. You've had 30 elected officials who've engaged in the perp walk in the last 10 years. Convicted, sentenced, penalized, whatever. And primarily it's for graft. It's because they've been using, ciphering off public funds for their own personal use.
Which is what this mayor just happens to be charged with.
The controller of the state of New York uncovered some information, referred that case over to the Attorney General, and the Office of Attorney General is now prosecuting this individual. And that's an agreement that they have, and that's one of the responsibilities of the Office of Attorney General. The Office of Attorney General also has the ability to prosecute individuals for consumer fraud under Article 63, for deceptive business practices and misleading advertising. They also focus on the Martin Act, where they police Wall Street. They've got criminal jurisdiction under that. They do Medicaid fraud. They go after individuals who engage in crime, organized crime. They've got an organized crime task force. They've got a real estate financing bureau. They've got a charities bureau, which deals with not-for-profits, which has a criminal aspect to it. So they've got a broad breadth and depth of enforcing state law. They also do affirmative litigation whenever you can establish pattern and practices where individuals are violating the rights of individuals. They also have an enforcement role, which is why it's really critically important that we enforce the role, given the fact that the federal government, under this illegitimate president, is basically refusing to enforce federal law.
Right.
And they also have an advocacy role where you can introduce bills and things like that. And so I would like for the Office of Attorney General to have original jurisdiction so that you can prosecute, so that you can investigate corruption on your own without going through the
Our other co-host just walked in the door,
Hello,
Dr.
co-host.
Robert Baskerville.
without going through the governor of the state of New York.
He
So that's
found
what
out you was going to be here. He went to get dressed. He
he
went back
did. He
home.
looks really nice.
He dropped me off, then went back to get dressed because he wanted to be proper when you came
Really?
to
Oh, he looks very proper.
No, he's being kind. He told me he would not allow me on set if I did not have on a tie.
You look
I
very
don't
good.
wear a tie often, very rarely, so he saw that I had one. That's what happened. So
Yes.
So that's what the Office of Attorney General does, and so I understand that the trial is happening this weekend, but I'm still campaigning. The election is Thursday, and I'm urging everyone to get out and vote and just remember what our ancestors did for our right to vote.
now, before Bob gets in, I wanted to ask one more question as far as, say, criminal justice. Now,
Yeah.
you know, African Americans, unfortunately, have been killed
Yep.
by shot at, killed
Yep.
by the police. The Eric Garner situation, while it was against New York City NYPD policy, it wasn't against the chokehold. Wasn't against the law.
Correct.
And then just before the Raynette Turner incident in Mount Vernon, the sixth woman to die in the month of June 2015. Everybody remembers Sandra Bland. She was the most famous of them all.
And there was a young lady in Buffalo who was found
Right,
in a cell.
right. And so just before the Raynette Turner incident, Cuomo signed the executive order, I guess, and where the Attorney General is automatically
Yeah.
the special,
Prosecutor.
right, in cases dealing with custody of the police.
That's right.
Can you speak on that? Because
Sure.
that's a major concern to our community,
Without a doubt.
you know, and just because, and no disrespect, but everyone who looks like us is not for us. So
That's right.
I want them to hear from you.
So, as you know, as a city council member and as the public advocate, or as the public advocate of the city of New York, I went to court to get the grand jury minutes in the Eric Garner case because my eyes don't lie, and because what we all witnessed, the death of Eric Garner, individuals should have been held accountable. Unfortunately, we were not successful, but we went to court to argue for those grand jury minutes because I believe the grand jury process is anachronistic, and I believe that there should be more transparency to the grand jury system because of the inherent conflict between and their inherent relationship between police and prosecutors. Individuals need to know that, in fact, the grand jury process, particularly as it relates to Eric Garner, was fair.
You said they need to know it was fair, or it was fair.
That we need to
Oh,
know.
okay.
We need to know. That's why I went to court. Because
Right.
I wanted to read the transcript
Right,
to see what was presented.
right.
But unfortunately, we were denied. And individuals, there needs to be more transparency. So we got to change the law with respect to the grand jury process. And as the next Attorney General, I plan on doing that. I also, in the aftermath of the Eric Garner, my office wrote a letter to Eric Snyderman and to the governor, urging them to have the Attorney General appointed as a special prosecutor. We initiated that. And so I'm glad that the governor issued an executive order, but it's just an executive order, which
Right.
can expire
Right.
or be rescinded.
Right.
and it needs to be codified in law. It needs to be permanent.
Well, I'm glad you said it because I want to bring that up.
And so we will be urging that when we become the next Attorney General of the state of New York as well. It's important that you have independent eyes and ears to investigate individuals who die in police custody and who die as a result of police interaction. But the law needs to be broadened because it only extends to individuals who are unarmed.
Right.
And so there are situations like, for instance, what we saw in New York City, where a police officer shot someone, and then the video, he did not know he was on videotape.
That was in Brooklyn, right? Was that the one in Brooklyn? Right.
Was about to plant a gun on an individual, and then reconsidered. It's important that your listeners know that I led the way in the city of New York to provide members of NYPD body-worn cameras.
Yes, I heard that.
Because whenever there is a street encounter, we need an objective view of police street encounters. But that program needs to be expanded statewide, and we plan on advocating for that as the next Attorney General
I want to address.
of the state of New York.
I just want to address a listener.
Yeah.
Because they misheard me. Because they
Yeah.
said, why, if the police acquitted the chokehold, if it's illegal? The chokehold was against police policy.
Yeah, it wasn't
but it
illegal.
is not illegal,
Correct.
and that's why they weren't charged, and that needs to be changed.
Yeah, there is a law pending in the City Council. A council member, Rory Landsman from Queens, has introduced that bill, and we hope that it is passed, and we hope that we outlaw the chokehold in the city of New York. But it's important that we also reform our criminal justice system, period. One, I support the legalization of marijuana. Because the war on drugs
That's my kind of girl. No, I'm just kidding.
because the war on drugs is a war on black and brown people.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's why.
Two, there's too many people. We need to make sure that we do not criminalize mental illness. There's too many individuals who suffer from mental illness who are in our courts and in our jails, and poverty should not be a crime. We should also reform our bail system. We need to get rid of cash bail. We need more alternatives to incarceration. We need to have open discovery because we don't believe that we should have trial by ambush. We need to make sure that we pass that prosecutorial misconduct bill, which was passed by the governor. He did sign it into law, but there are some challenges to that law. But there is clearly we've got to have to get past some litigation because we know district attorneys oppose that bill. But prosecutors need to be held accountable for their misdeeds. My neighbor was the late Ken Thompson from Brooklyn, who, as you know, campaigned on focusing on reforming our criminal justice system, but also focusing on the integrity of convictions. And he had a conviction integrity unit, and as you know, prior to his untimely death, he was able to vindicate at least I think it was at least 30 black and Latino men and women who had been wrongly convicted, who had spent a significant amount of time in jail. So, and it's not just limited to Brooklyn, it's all over the state. And so we need conviction integrity review, and I would like to do that as part of working with the Innocence Project as the next Attorney General of the state of New York. So it's really critically important that we, again, reform our criminal justice system from top to bottom.
Absolutely.
Because it is a perverse economic development engine, which unfortunately is based on the misery and the poverty of countless number of people of color and low-income people across the state.
Now, I know Lorraine has questions, and then Bob after.
I just have one question, and it's from an audience member. Donna Nolan, she wrote, I really want to know where she stands on illegal guns and the law we have signed by the governor and not enforced for 3.5 years for an illegal gun.
So I support the SAFE Act, which is one of the strongest gun control measures in the state of New York. But I think most importantly, as the next Attorney General, I want to go after the NRA. Because the NRA, believe it or not, is a not-for-profit organization. And the Attorney General has the responsibilities and duties to enforce the charities law and the not-for-profit laws. And I think, and this is my opinion, that the NRA is not a not-for-profit, does not engage in charitable activities, but is nothing more than a terrorist organization. And so I want to
Strong
use
words.
Yeah, when you go to as many funerals as I've had to go to, when you've had to hold as many mothers and grandmothers as I have had to do, is if you've seen too many lives too many Black and Latino individuals who unfortunately have not reached their full potential because of senseless gun violence, I plan on taking on the NRA as I've done. And all of those banks who finance the NRA need to know that their reputational risks are put in jeopardy when they finance organizations such as the NRA. And last but not least, we need to make sure that we fund organizations such as SNUG, those community-based organizations on the ground who are violence interrupters, and increase the peace in our communities. And talk about gun violence wherever we go, and talk about the need to resolve our differences, not by taking up a gun, that's a punk's way, but by resolving them through communication and through dispute resolution, and by just resolving them and saving the lives of innocent individuals.
Dr. Bob.
So firstly, let me formally welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Bob, for looking so formal and so serious.
Well, I'm going to lighten up in a minute, I promise. So it's a very crowded field.
Yes.
For Attorney General, the Attorney General's race, and many of your competitors have made one of their key themes a kind of anti-establishment critique.
Yes.
And I, insofar as I have followed the debate, I do know that there have been a number of critics who have raised questions about what they perceive to be an overly cozy relationship with the Democratic Party establishment here in New York State. Mm-hmm. Specifically, I happened to listen to the interview you did with Brian Lara a couple of weeks ago, and I know you did have an opportunity to address it, but I was cut short. But nevertheless, because I had to run into class, nevertheless, I know it is a concern for many of our listeners. There does seem to be an anti-establishment mood throughout the country, and especially here in New York, as you see a leftward drift. And I want to know, could you address this and tell us why, even though you may be solidly in the Democratic Party camp, nevertheless, you still think you're well-equipped, well-prepared to do the people's work and push us in a progressive direction.
I've got a 20-year body of work where no one has ever questioned my independence. In fact, prior to this vacancy, everybody would call me to a rally. Everyone would call Tish James. Everyone wanted to hear her voice. No one has ever questioned my independence. Now, all of a sudden, because the governor, in his good wisdom, decided to support me, now all of a sudden my independence is called into question. I don't think anyone can question my independence when children in Buffalo are being poisoned by lead. I'm not going to allow anyone to question my independence when I go after those individuals who are jeopardizing those babies. When I've got residents in public housing who are living in conditions, in squalid conditions, affecting their rent, affecting their health, threatening their health and their safety, I'm not going to allow anyone to question my independence when I sue any municipality, the mayor of the city of New York, or even the governor. When I sued the governor over the foster care children, because children were unfortunately in foster care for too long and they were abused and psychologically, physically, and sexually, no one questioned my independence. They said, "Go, girl." When I sued the mayor on behalf of tenants, because the city of New York, they had this concept of pour doors. You basically would build a unit, and the subsidized units, individuals would have to go to a separate through a separate entrance called a pour door, and those that were market rate individuals would have to go through a separate door. I got rid of that. I sued because that was discriminatory. When I sued,
smacks of some of the worst vestiges of racial discrimination.
Without a doubt, and we got rid of it. No one questioned my independence then. When I went against one of the most powerful developers in Brooklyn for building an arena for the worst team in the NBA, risking my political career, and taking him and joining with my community as we challenged him, no one questioned my independence then. So within the last 3 months since I've been on this campaign trail, there are individuals who are questioning, primarily because they've got a problem with Governor Cuomo. But Governor Cuomo isn't running for Attorney General. Letitia James is running for Attorney General. And each and every time I've had to scratch and claw and fight and use the law to stand up for people who have been invisible, people without a voice, people who are marginalized and vulnerable. And I'm not going to forget them. Why? Because I know where I come from. And as someone who comes from humble beginnings, whose mother was once on welfare, who once scrubbed floors, whose father was a maintenance man, but now as a candidate for Attorney General, and in all likelihood after Thursday will be, I recognize all that we had to go through and what our ancestors had to go through for the right to vote. And I'm constantly reminded of that.
I wanna
And so it's not a question. It's not an issue for me. It won't be an issue for me in the future because I know where my bread is buttered. And as someone who just came from at least 4 churches, I know who I answer to a higher power.
So we have a listener, Elias Goodsight, and I wanted to address him. He asked a question that you already answered. What is the role of the Attorney General in investigating
Improprieties
in local government? I would ask him to, at the end of the show, go back and watch the video again because you actually answered that question. Okay. But I just wanted to let him know that it was asked. Sean Patterson Howard said, "Thank you for supporting SNUG. We need violence interrupters on the ground and in the community to do this work. We must combine traditional and non-traditional approaches for violence in the community." And I wanted to give you, we always hear in these situations every candidate says, why they're the candidate. Who is Tish James the person?
So let me just tell you about SNUG. And again, 10 black men have been murdered in Albany, and one was a member of SNUG. And in fact, I met his father recently. So let's pray for him.
Okay.
Who is Tish James?
Yes.
Tish James comes from humble beginnings, as I just mentioned. One of 8. Mom was once on public assistance. Tish James is basically a fighter, a proud graduate of Howard University School of Law. And I wanted to walk the halls of Howard University because, Howard University was the laboratory for the civil rights movement. And it was there that I learned to be a freedom fighter. It was there that I learned to use the law as a means to address the inequalities in our nation, in our city, and in our state. And it was there that I learned about the Constitution and that no one is above the law, including the president, including the governor, including the mayor of the city of New York, and how the law historically has been a sword and a shield. But as I said today in church, we've been through this storm before, and we've come out on the other side. And so no matter what's facing us and no matter what's challenging us, we have stood up time and time again against powers and forces and powers and forces that have violated our rights. And now we're all in the same boat now, as this president violates the rights of immigrants and Muslims and women. We all know what's at stake. And to be honest with you, everything is at stake. And so we've got to vote, just like President Barack Obama said 2 days ago at a rally.
Yes.
We've got to vote, that we've got to use the power that's in our hand, because our ancestors died and bled for that right, and you can't take it for granted.
Absolutely.
And we basically have been taking so much for granted, and this president has awoken us, a sleeping dragon, to the fact that with a stroke of a pen, he could take away so many of our rights.
Right.
And so now all of us have got to come out and vote. You got to vote on Thursday and in November in quiet dignity, in quiet defiance, and in quiet resistance to what is happening in our nation and in our state and in our cities. And so don't take this for granted. Vote. Vote Thursday. Vote Thursday and bring your friends, your family, and even your friend enemies. Vote. And vote for a champion, a true fighter. And her name is Letitia James. And make history, just like we made history in New York City. Let's make history across the state. Let's make history in New York State by electing Letitia James, a true fighter, and someone who has consistently and repeatedly spoken truth to power.
For those who are listening, because we have other guests coming, I would love to just talk to you for another 2 hours. But I want to give the people who are listening that may not know about you, how do they get in touch with you? Is there a website? Or is there social media? How do they find out more about you? So they can, and maybe even contact you if they want to help or something.
So my name is Letitia. That's Letitia James, 2018. You can also Google Tish. That's my nickname, Tish James, 2018. I'm all on social media, Twitter account, Facebook account, campaign. We're located in Brooklyn. We've got campaign offices here in Westchester. We're running. I just left Andrea Stewart Cousins, Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins, who will be the next majority leader. I just left Senator.
And the next guest.
And the next
Oh,
guest.
yeah. Okay. So I just left her, and she's the next guest. And Senator Shelley Mayers and countless number. I've been endorsed by just about every elected official up here in Westchester and Black Westchester. And so I'm looking forward to being the next Attorney General of the state of New York. And I'm looking forward to enforcing the law, being creative, being innovative, challenging President Trump, rooting out corruption, and again standing up for the rights of New Yorkers and being the people's lawyer.
And I have one last question, and it is a Trump question.
Yeah.
Barbara Underwood has been very diligent in her investigation and what she is doing. If elected, what would you do to continue the work she is doing to push back against this president and possibly get him out of office or whatever?
Barbara Underwood can stay in the office and she can do whatever she wants.
Right.
And so we're going to continue to focus on the Emoluments Clause, which is a clause focusing on self-enrichment. We're going to continue to focus on the Trump Foundation because he turned that into his personal piggy bank. We're going to continue to follow his money, his business transactions. We're going to continue to work with the Southern District. We're going to continue to work and follow Mueller's investigations. We're going to continue to focus on his obstruction of justice allegations and his charges. We're going to continue to focus on whether or not he's laundered money, working with China, President Kim and Putin, these dictators and these autocrats. We're going to continue to focus on his relatives, who obviously met with the Russians at his hotel. We're going to continue to investigate. All of a sudden, 10 years ago, he was almost bankrupt, and then all of a sudden he became flush with money. We know that domestic banks weren't loaning him any money. Where did he get that money from? All of that and more we're going to work on. And also at the same time, we're going to focus on, again, corruption and rooting out corruption and following the facts and the evidence wherever it lies, but also focusing on a crisis which is right around the corner, and that is student debt and also consumer fraud and abolishing ICE and protecting immigrants. And protecting a woman's right to choose, and environmental racism, and the list goes on, and Medicaid fraud, and health care, and the opioid crisis, and the list goes on and on. We've done it before. We're going to do it as the next Attorney General, because the next Attorney General will be wearing high heels, and the next Attorney General, again, will be Letitia James, but only if you come out to vote. So I need you to get him out, and get him out.
We thank you because I know your schedule is busy, and I've been going through hoops for the last couple of weeks to get you here.
I'm here.
So I definitely appreciate because a lot of people don't make the time, and the audience doesn't really get to hear. We may not ask the questions that other people ask. We ask the questions our audience wants to hear. So
I appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And tell everyone again, from Buffalo, all over the state of New York, to Long Island, to Westchester, to New York City.
Putnam County.
Putnam County, Syracuse, Buffalo, Albany County, Ithaca, Rochester. Please come out and vote. I need everyone to come out and vote. And if we come out and vote on Thursday, this Thursday, we will be victorious because I'm naming it and I am claiming it. My name is Letitia James. God bless you and thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Very good.
So I'm going to ask that Lorraine and Bob talk for a minute because I'm going outside to take a picture for the paper. So keep talk.
And
Okay.
don't let her leave without me going back and taking a picture.
Okay.
Tell Andrew, tell her, send it out.
No problem. No problem.
Yeah. That was an interesting, very, very, very good segment just now. Very good. You know what? Her birthday's the day before mine.
Oh,
October
really?
18th, yes.
Well, whatever wonderful
Yes.
qualities you have, I'm sure the Attorney General candidate possesses as well.
Do you know what? There was a question I wanted to ask. Maybe you have the answer to it. When she becomes State Attorney General, who becomes a public advocate?
There'll be an election, a special election.
There'll be the definitive authoritative answer is there will be a special election.
Oh, okay.
Do you want
Thank
to take
you.
a picture? Come on.
I am back.
Wonderful, wonderful. AJ, you know I cannot possibly fill your shoes, brother.
No, you have your own shoes. I don't have to, I stay home sometimes and you just hold it down. Shout out to former Yonkers City Councilman Christopher Johnson, who is our newest county legislator, who's in the building, and I just wanted to acknowledge his presence. Chris, it's been a minute since you've been on the show, so we need you to come and let us know how you're doing up there in the legislative office. Yes, and I do say, and I want to say, I bug Chris sometimes, but you know what? Even if I'm on the air and I hit him on Facebook, if he can, he will call in and address the situation. So I just want to give him, a shout out for that. So anyway, so that was the first portion of the pre-primary edition. That was New York State Attorney General candidate Tish James. So you've heard from two of the Democratic candidates. Last week you heard from Licia Eve, and like I did with her, I will break this up into just her portion of the show and post it on Black Westchester so you can hear her from beginning to end, and she can share it with her people and everything and all that good stuff. And I will do that with the other two candidates. The senator should be on her way soon if she's not outside.
No, she got 10 minutes.
So, Bob,
yes.
What have you been up to? You didn't do the intro with us. What you been up to? What you work on? You're
well,
always working on something. I know you're back to school, but classes start. So
I'm back to school. Classes have started, but as you know, outside of the classroom, essentially, I've been continuing on the secret project that I've been working on, a kind of web platform we've discussed.
Okay.
That I'm hoping to launch soon.
As soon as you're ready to talk about it,
yes.
Talk about it here.
Yeah, so that's basically it. And, in addition, getting myself prepared for the election season, I'm a big proponent of citizen activism. I think that if there's going to be a turnaround, it's got to start with us. It's not simply a matter of having good candidates, but also people putting boots on the ground, hands on voting levers. And so I'm always trying to do my best to, try to mobilize and energize people to get out into the polls in other ways.
So while we're in between guests, now I watched Obama, former President Barack Obama has spoke at least twice, once in Chicago and once at, was it Disney World or in California, somewhere near Disney World. Told an interesting story about Disney World. But I know he, in the 2008-2012 elections, right, he managed to galvanize the vote for himself. But the midterm elections of 2010 and 2014, or was it 2014, right, and 2010, he wasn't able to galvanize the votes for others. As well. The turnout was considerably less. And now he's on the campaign trail now. Of course, the Republicans, Trump and the Republicans, will use that to galvanize their, which they're pretty loyal to him. Do you think, what do you think his involvement will help? Will it help, hurt, or will it galvanize the?
Let me start my answer by noting that it's very unusual and a sort of break with the tacit
absolutely
tradition for a former president to criticize a sitting president.
His sitting successor,
yes. Very unusual. However, I think former President Obama rightly recognizes that this is a very unusual presidency, a time in history that we're living through, and unfortunately, he has concluded, and I agree wholeheartedly, that the Trump presidency represents an existential threat to the democratic order here in the United States and across the globe. So much of the conduct of President Trump has been diametrically opposed to our long-standing democratic traditions, from respect for freedom of the press, separation of powers, the rule of law, non-interference in criminal investigations, especially ones that target the president himself, and also a rising tide of white supremacy that President Trump's rhetoric continues to energize. And in that sense, I think President Obama is absolutely right that he can not afford to sit on the sideline we are in a national emergency. Will he? Yeah, what will be the outcome? Because I agree with you that it will not only mobilize Democratic voters, but also mobilize Republican voters who feel that this is unfair to President Trump. You know, in the end, I really do think this, and I guess this is wishful thinking, perhaps,
Right.
that the Democratic forces will prevail in the midterm election. I think this is much bigger than partisan politics and mere differences in policy, but rather whether or not we are going to continue to persist as a democratic republic. So I'm hoping and praying that in the end, President Obama's intervention in the campaign will make a difference. But I also have to note that there are many Republicans of impeccable credentials who have likewise called on all voters, whether they be Republican, Democratic, or Independent, to send a clear and unambiguous message to the Republican Party leadership with their disappointment with the behavior of President Trump and the failure of the Republican leadership to really stand up for square for our democratic traditions with a small d. And in that sense, I really do believe that the univocal cry, the single cry that's being sounded by all quarters about the danger that President Trump's presidency represents, I think it may well make the difference and may at least save the semblance of democracy that we have in a day of corporate dominance.
Now, I'll read Sean Patterson's comment, and then I have another question about the Senator Booker in the Kavanaugh hearings. Sean Patterson Howard said, let me bring that up. You have to have great candidates out there who are, capital letters, really saying something. You can't just rally people around what we don't like, but also have a clear vision as to what needs to be done to change the problem. And the same thing needs to be done on a local level as well, even more so. Now, I wanted to move on to one of the things we saw was the Supreme Court Justice hearings for Mr. Kavanaugh, and we saw a break from tradition or something that was never done before, where New Jersey Senator Cory Booker felt that certain documents that were being held that had no national security risk or anything, but were being held, they had information that the public needed to see. And even though they were not to release them, he went against, I guess, the law, actually, and that they passed.
Senate rules.
And the Senate rules, and he released it knowing that they could possibly boot him from the Senate. I wanted you to speak on it was that, but we do while it was a bold move, some have just said, you know, he's planning to run for, I guess, president or something. He's planning to run for something soon, and that was just, you know, that's why he did it. So I just wanted to know if any thoughts you had, any clarity you can bring to that situation.
You know, there's been a lot of deeply troubling questions raised about the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh for a Supreme Court justice.
Thanks, because I couldn't think of his first name to save my life. Yeah.
It's not many people are aware of this, but there are some rather incestuous ties between Brett Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court justice who he may well replace, Anthony Kennedy, and also Anthony Kennedy's son, who served as a high-ranking member of Deutsche Bank when it was making loans to the Trump Foundation. Not much discussed, however, for some commentators it has raised questions as to whether or not there was some sort of quid pro quo and whether an agreement had been struck behind the scenes regarding Supreme Court Justice Kennedy's retirement. Many feel that the fix is in. It's compounded by the fact that the Republican majority in the Senate has seemed to use a lot of subterfuge in order to shield, some tricks in order to shield the public from full knowledge of Brett Kavanaugh's legal record, both during his time in the Bush presidency, if I'm not mistaken. I've had an opportunity to read some of the emails, and the basic issue is that, from what I understand, because I actually did watch some of the hearings, I happen to like watching C-SPAN and watching the hearings, and so I did have an opportunity.
I watch it too.
Yes, to get a full discussion of some of the issues that were raised, and essentially the exchange between Senator Booker, Senator Harris, Senator Klobuchar, and other senators who sit on the Judiciary Committee was that the decision to designate some of Brett Kavanaugh's communications in his previous position was in fact done unilaterally, and itself was a break with the normal traditions, which would have required some sort of bipartisan agreement about the process for designating records confidential, and therefore was thought to be a kind of underhanded tactic to prevent this information from coming to light. And a lot of it, to be honest, I think is quite damning and very troubling.
Action on, what was one part of it was affirmative action, I guess. Part of it was, what was the other part?
Some of the position on whether or not Roe v. Wade was a settled matter.
Right.
Although Kavanaugh has expressed that he would follow the judicial policy of stare decisis, which is a fancy way of saying you're going to respect the previous legal precedents that have been enacted or voiced by the Supreme Court from previous decisions. In public, he said he would respect stare decisis. However, in private, in some of his exchanges and some of his appearances in public fora, he has made the case that Roe v. Wade is not settled law, and that should be deeply troubling, especially in other
especially since the president
on
the campaign trail, Trump said, he's going to have the opportunity to put some justices in there, and they're going to get rid of Roe v. I mean, he said that on the campaign trail, like that's
right.
So it wouldn't be too far to assume that he picked this candidate for a reason,
And what other commentators have noted is just recently the Supreme Court, after the nomination of Gorsuch, who was President Trump's first selection, that after a year-long filibuster, essentially, of Justice Garlick, who was Barack Obama's nomination for the Supreme Court, they overturned a long-standing precedent that ensured union rights when they issued the Janus decision,
right,
which essentially upended established legal precedent about union rules and whether or not employees should whether or not unions should serve as the representatives for all employees in a shop.
So what do you think? So I don't know if you spoke to speaking specifically of Cory Booker's actions. What was your thoughts on that when you?
While it was unusual, again, I think we live on unusual times, and it calls for unusual, maybe unseen, unprecedented actions. And so far as, I don't think it was fair, so far as I know. The procedures I don't think were fair. I think the attempt to, shield the public from knowing Kavanaugh's record really is itself anti-democratic, and in that sense, I'm fully in support.
And it was what was interesting was when the other Democratic congressmen, they stood in support.
Right.
One in particular said, you know what, and whatever punishment or whatever's coming down the pike, add my name to that list. And then another one,
Right.
the other one from Hawaii, I think she was from Hawaii.
Yes.
She released some more
I think
documents.
Senator Hirano.
Yeah,
maybe.
she released some more documents, and they basically rallied that if you're gonna charge one of us, you're gonna have to charge everybody. Like,
And I think the Democratic base is insistent that our leadership, Democratic representatives, really stand up to the unconventional tactics that Republican senators and congresspersons continue to use to kind of thwart the affair and democratic process, with a small d, of reaching important decisions that affect the well-being of all of the nation, including the right of women to exercise reproductive freedom. I have to say, I don't think that there are more serious, more painful moral choices that a woman who has an unwanted pregnancy will have to face, but whether or not to terminate a pregnancy. And I don't think anyone is going to be at greater pains in making that decision and will go through more anguish than a woman herself. And I, in the end, think that we have to leave it in the hands of women who have demonstrated a commitment to life in ways that many of their male counterparts seem to be obtuse to. I think it's the height of hypocrisy that Republicans continue to harp on their support for life, the right to life and support of the unborn, and yet all of their policies represent a frontal attack on the living, those who must make a way under immense hardship that their policies continue to impose upon us. And if I'm going to turn to anyone for solid moral guidance and compass, I'm going to put my faith in my fellow women. I know that this is not a decision that will be made lightly.
So moving on to our next portion of the show, this is the Black Westchester Presents People Before Politics radio show pre-primary edition. This is the last Sunday before the Thursday, September 13th primary. Very important election. And our next guest is a friend of the show, Senator Andrea Stewart Cousins. Now, officially minority leader right now? Yes. And hopefully the majority leader
One more
after November.
Yes.
If everybody comes out and, as Obama says, as former President Barack Obama, sometimes they call him Barack and they call him Obama. I think he was a president, and I think you should still have the formality.
Absolutely.
Like, it's still President Bush. Like, they say President Bush and President Reagan, but they say Clinton and Obama. Like, so anyway, former President Obama, he said, you have to go out and do your job.
That's right.
And that's for everybody listening here. We want the elected officials to do their job, but there's a job that all of us as voters have to do, and that's go out and vote. And not only go out and vote, your neighbor who may not be able to get to the poll, bring them. Seniors in your area that may not have rides, to bring them. To, you know what I'm saying? To do all that you can to get people out to the vote. And I think that's very important, and everyone listening needs to do that Thursday and then again in November. But
right.
I'd like to welcome our guest and give her, not the first time, but give her an official round of applause. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So I just saw you Friday. So
I know.
Black and Brown Law Enforcement came out and supported you.
Thank you so much.
That was good. And Damon, well, he told you he wasn't able to,
Right.
he's moving and everything, so he's not able to be here today. I'm sure at some point he will call in. So I want you to talk about, how many, I know people don't understand, we try to educate people.
Yes,
so the whole
exactly.
minority leader, majority
Right.
leader, how many votes, what is,
What
explain,
what is all of
that
this
mean?
about?
Yeah. And can
Thank
you just take the mic, put it closer to you? We want everybody to hear you. You can pull it to you.
Okay.
Yeah,
How's
there,
that?
there you go.
That's
That's
good.
great. That's
huh?
perfect.
That's it. All right. Well, again, it's really good to be here, and certainly thank you for the support, not only now but over the years. And you're right. There is an education process that we need, because people kind of think they know, and then it turns out the people that we even think know really might be a little bit unclear on some of the different particulars. So I'm in the New York State Senate.
Yes.
And the Senate, and again, people say call your senators, and I tell them, you know, there's a federal level of senators, and there are state senators.
Right.
So there, on the state level, there are 63 senators.
Okay.
And the minority or majority title goes to which of the parties, Democrat, Republican, are in either the majority or the minority.
Right.
So in the
Same
assembly,
same thing on the national level, right? Yeah.
same thing on the national
Right.
level. So in New York State, in the assembly, there is a majority of Democrats. And Speaker Hastie is the Speaker of the House, and it's dominated by Democrats. In the Senate, the domination is the Republicans. So the Republicans are in the majority. The Democrats are in the minority by 1 seat. So I am the leader of the Senate Democrats, so I'm the minority leader. And the way you get to be leader is that your colleagues decide to vote for you to be leader. So it's not an appointment.
Right.
Your colleagues actually, pick a leader.
Right.
So I became leader at the end of 2012, which has been an immense honor and obviously a privilege. It's also historic because there has never been a woman who's been selected or elected to be leader,
Okay.
neither in the Assembly or in the Senate, neither by Democrats or Republicans before when my colleagues elected me.
Okay.
So it was really an incredible opportunity to, try and move the policy agenda forward, and also make sure that Democrats, could finally work together. So there was, quite a long spell where even within Democrats, and that happened before I became leader, there was a split. But as of April of this year, all the Democrats have come back together under my leadership.
So that did happen.
That
because,
did happen.
I mean, we hear things, and we knew there was an IDC, and then
That's
they
right.
supposedly came back,
That's
and then I
right.
heard that they weren't. So
No, they actually did come back.
They did a video.
okay.
Yeah, they actually came back.
Welcome
in
back.
April. They actually came back in April, and the government facilitated the conversation, and it was going to be the way they were talking about doing this last year. It was going to be a co-leadership, the IDC
Yeah. Right,
leader
right.
and myself.
Right.
And then as of
The IDC leader being Senator Jeff Klein?
right, and that was the way it had been posited last year, and it was sort of contingent upon the special election because last year George Latimer, as you know, ran for county executive and won.
Right.
And Ruben Diaz Sr., who was also a senator, ran for city council and won.
Okay.
So
He needs to stay there.
we were down, and he will. I don't think he
Tell us how you really feel.
Not a big fan, huh, Lorraine?
Not from what I heard, no, not at all.
Yeah. So I was down 2 seats. Now, I never, when the IDC was a separate conference from my conference, I never accepted the name, the title minority leader, because the IDC conference was smaller than mine.
Right.
So it's like, well, no, we're not in the minority.
Right.
And so I would always say, well, I'm the Democratic conference leader.
I see.
But now, after April, when everyone has come back together and we have functioned as a conference, and there are not 2 co-leaders, there's only me as the leader. Now, yes, I will, say, yes, I'm the minority leader. But as you mentioned, AJ, in November, and that's, of course, I'm in a primary in this month, September 13th, Thursday. And should I get reelected
When
this
you get
primary,
reelected.
thank you, when I get reelected, then in November, if we keep every Democratic seat we have and we add just one more seat, the Democrats will be in the majority.
Well, I hope you have 3 or 4 seats. So
Me too,
So
because you know
so
it's
there's no
always,
doubt about it.
no, and you know it's always hard when you're only working with a one-person majority, because any person,
It's a very fragile majority.
yeah, you know, any person could be the person that holds up the thing.
Right.
And you saw it, I think, this past just this past session with Simca Felder.
Right.
You know, he wanted to have the education standards for yeshivas lowered, and he didn't want to pass a budget until that happened. And because he was giving his vote to the Republicans, they still had, you know, the majority by just him, and he held up, you know, and held out for a very long time, you know, trying to get exactly what he wanted. So there's always that possibility, if you only have this one, that there's somebody's going to be the person who wants to hold up everything and hold up progress. So I am hoping, as you are, that we have enough, and more than enough, frankly, to be able to govern, which is the point. We want to be able to govern, and we want to be able to move New York forward, and you know, be progressive. You know, fight the terrible Trump policies that continue to be leveled at us, and really sort of be, you know, a national model of sane, sensible, progressive, democratic governance.
That's definitely desperately needed.
I know.
There's one last question about the minority-majority thing.
Yes.
What duties does a majority leader have that a minority leader doesn't
Okay.
have?
So the majority leader has the resources, is the person, so you hear about the 3 men in the room. Many
Right,
people have
right.
heard this. So the 3 men are the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly, who's Carl Hastie, and the President or Majority Leader of the Senate. And because those positions in New York State have always been held by men,
Right.
they've always talked about 3 men in a room.
So we got to rename that to 2 men and a woman.
Well, you know, it'll be 3 people.
Right.
A
And-
woman and 2 men.
That's right. All right. Yes, let's definitely turn it around.
Yeah.
So it, you know, when you're in the majority, then it is assumed that you have the numbers to enact any policy. I mean, so you're in the minority, you can, and we always do. You know, we have been unabashedly, you know, pushing folks, whether it was the minimum wage, and you know, we gave, you know, our entire conference was the reason why, whether it was marriage equality or the SAFE Act with guns, all of those things are because we had the lion's share of the vote.
Right,
But
right.
you're not driving the policy.
Right.
So when you're the majority leader or the Speaker of the Assembly or the governor, you're actually driving the policy. So you decide what comes on the floor to be voted on. So I always say with my Republicans, last year there were about 600 bills that increased criminal penalties for a whole host of things.
Not good.
You know,
not a good look.
because that's
What they do.
what
The
they're
law and
thinking.
order policy.
You
of
know what I mean?
Republican
That's what they do.
generally.
So you know, just think, if you're looking at policies that are preventive, that are investing in our children, are investing in, you know, after school programs, you're investing in people in ways that really enhance, you know, their opportunities. If you are creating, you know, strong education and supporting resources and so on and so forth, you know, the policies that you put forward look different. And you were talking about some of the policy issues that, you know, we couldn't even get early voting. You know, we're talking about today, or rather this week, we've moved the primary, as you know, from Tuesday, September 11th to
right,
Thursday.
right.
And that was because of September 11th as well as Rosh Hashanah. And if we had early voting,
Right.
a lot of these things, you know, wouldn't be an issue
Right.
because we're no longer in a society where everybody has this one day that they can, I mean, it doesn't work for our lives. But yet, we couldn't get the Republican majority to even talk about early voting, to put the laws forward, you know, which I was carrying, and now Brian Kavanaugh has. Early registration for 16 and 17-year-olds, automatic registration, you know, no excuse absentee ballot. There's a lot of things that New York could do that would actually enhance people's ability to exercise this very important franchise, which Republicans just will not do. And whether it's talking about climate change or reproductive health or whatever, you know, it's just a totally different mindset. And that's the difference between being in the majority of criminal justice reform. You know, we had to fight for raise the age. It was really, really a hard fight.
And Senator, at the time, Senator Latimer he had to cancel an appearance here because y'all stayed there to get that through.
And it was absolutely a fight to get it through. And even now, you know, we've still got more to do. And, you know, when you're talking about speedy trial and you're talking about this bail system that people are basically many times, you know, incarcerated. You look at Khalif Browder, who was a student at my school, Bronx Community College, yes. Yeah, I mean, you know, just sad, basically, because he couldn't, you know, afford bail.
Right, that's what I was going to ask you. I know, is it California that's doing the no
bail.
What is it? No financial bail, whatever the word.
No cash bail.
No cash bail.
How
do you feel about that? Is that something we can do in New York?
Well, I think we have to talk. I mean, like I said, you can't just put people in jail because they can't afford bail. Right. You know, the reason why you hold people is because you think they're a flight risk or they're a danger and some other things. I mean, but if you're just saying, well, you know, no matter what you did, but, you know, pay me $5,000, oh, you can't do that, or you're... You know, it's not justice.
I wanted to interject. I'm sorry, Senator. If, for example, as in the case of Raynette Turner, you are accused of shoplifting,
$35 worth of crab legs,
you may avoid being detained and held overnight and possibly, falling prey to neglect while you're in the custody of local authorities.
Well, a lot of former officers of the Mount Vernon Police Department and around the state who I talked to as experts, they all said that she should have just been RR. She shouldn't have never. She should have got a desk appearance ticket, period. Because, I mean, we're talking about $35 worth of crab legs. Like, she shouldn't have never spent the weekend in jail. You know. And and they knew she had health issues. They took her to the hospital. And I just want to say, I don't want to let the Mount Vernon Hospital off the hook because the police department took her to the hospital. They cleared her and took her back to jail. The hospital should never have cleared her. This could have been a different situation had the hospital not cleared her. The Mount Vernon Police Department should have gave her a desk appearance ticket there. And someone who now works for the police department again, who's a former officer, he said when I was doing that story that at that point that would have been the perfect time to give her a desk appearance ticket and then free those officers to then go back on the street because the officers have to watch her and
they're supposed to get a desk appearance ticket.
No, she had bail. She just got held over the weekend.
When it's $500 or less.
Well, she got held over the weekend and died in jail.
That's a shame.
You know, and I want to add that reforms of the kind being that were passed by the California government and being considered possibly by New York State not only advance the cause of social justice, but also just as importantly, really can lead to greater judicial efficiency and effectiveness. My sense is that really our judicial system is suffering from a crush of cases that make it very difficult to really get to some of the really challenging, cases of folks who are accused of committing serious crimes that do in fact pose a threat to public safety. But because we very often are locking people up for essentially what amounts to quality of life crimes, not that, for example, smoking weed on the streets, urinating, maybe having an open bottle of alcohol, Although we want to discourage people from doing those things, it seems the evidence would suggest that it's not the best use of our resources to lock people up for those kind of things. Let's focus on real serious crime.
And I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. If it's just about how do we make sure that people spend more time in jail for whatever it is, then you're not really looking at the issues that, again, can prevent a lot of these things, and really start moving our society in a direction that, when you get locked up, you really need to be there. Other than that, let's try and be like everybody else.
I've visited jails
Sure.
for
So have
different
I.
programs, and I'm gonna just
Me
tell
too.
you, I've met some people that I'm like, thank
Yes,
God
yes,
they were jails.
yes, great.
You know what I'm saying? So
Exactly.
let's just of all colors. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So. And some
Exactly.
people in my community, they need to be there, but
Exactly.
but not everyone does need to be there. Lorraine, I know you have some questions. You always
No,
have some
I'm
questions.
listening. I'm
Okay,
listening.
that's what I'm saying.
I got tons of questions.
Well, then get it popping.
First of all, how's it going? How is the race going?
Well, I think we've done a lot of voter contact. I'm knocking on doors at
I
the
hear
train
that.
stations in the mornings, and it's been really a very, very good. It's a good feeling out there. I've had the opportunity to serve people for a very long time, and people who know of my work and certainly can look up my record if they don't know, appreciate the things that I've been standing for, not just today or not just last week, but it has been consistent through my time in public service. So it's fine, and I'm looking forward to a victory on Thursday.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, I know you got endorsed by everybody.
Everybody.
Including
Everybody.
your opponent's
Colleagues.
colleagues.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah. The day that
sorry,
she
I don't mean to
announced, the day that she announced every single one of the legislators who she works for endorsed me.
Right, yeah.
So, which again was very, very encouraging, very heartening.
Yeah.
A lot of times people just stay out. Well, it's my colleague. What can I do? But nobody said that. And again, all of my municipal officials.
I know Mayor
and
Spano endorsed
Mayor
you,
Spano,
Cater.
Mayor Roach, at White Plains, Paul Feiner in Greenberg, Noam Branson. Every municipality that I represent and the council people and the town council people and so on.
Yes.
Certainly all the Democrats
Unions.
have. All the unions, the AFL-CIO, and all of the unions under that umbrella, 1199, the teachers, the nurses. I have had just an amazing, the state troopers, obviously, the black and brown law enforcement that stood with me on Friday.
Right.
So I have had across the women's groups, all of the women's groups, the Hispanic Democrats endorsed me the week after her announcements, as has
good for them.
as has the Black Democrats of Westchester, so the Hispanic Dems of Westchester and the Black Dems of Westchester, and I'm starting to get
That says a lot.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And I'm getting in terms of the gun groups, I've just gotten Mothers Demand Action, so the active people around the issues that we care about, because it's not really about personalities and this and that. It really is about the issues, and it's how do we not only articulate our vision or get angry that something bad happened, how do we move the ball forward so that we can make the changes that we need? And so all of these various groups, and in the environmental side, League of Conservation Voters, Sierra Club. So I have gotten every endorsement that I can think of. I'm sure there's a few that.
How about party lines? Any other party lines?
Yes, I have the Independence Party line, the Working Families Party line, the Reform Party line, the Women's Equality Party. So yes. But right now, the big line is the Democratic line.
Now, I want to before you do that, I want to even though you're a friend of the show, we still got to sometimes ask you the hard question, or at least
Sure.
give you a chance to
Sure.
address
Sure.
on the internet. Especially, there has been a lot said that you have been running from your opponent and wouldn't debate her, and I would like you to address that because I mean that's what's being
Yeah.
said on the.
Yeah, I think, well, there was one, I think the Yonkers Voice was asking
Right.
for a debate. And so we tried to work it out, and it got down to being the Jewish holiday. And, you know.
Well,
the
they're not very
convers-
pleased that you're here.
Well-
Because they said it's still a Jewish holiday.
No,
I
no,
ran
no,
into
no,
him
but there's
yesterday.
a difference. No, but there's a difference between having a
Sundown
debate and
Right.
making it hard for people to really who might be interested, or you know, inviting them to come, or going on a radio show.
Right, right, right.
I mean, you know, this is not a debate which, you know, technically would be open to the public and people would want to come, but for the fact that, oh, by the way, you're ignoring
Right.
a very important holiday. So
Right,
it's
right.
different, obviously, being on a radio show or doing an interview. But you
She's
know,
right where she needs to be.
Well,
right
no, I
where
just
she's
want,
meant to be.
But I would just want to give you a chance to speak to that.
Oh, sure.
Because I've been reading a lot, and everybody's been reading a lot, and there's been a lot going back and forth. And
Yes.
at least
Not
one
everybody's
division.
been
Well, I mean,
reading.
just that demographic though that is in your district. So
yes,
you know.
yes.
So,
well, no, I mean, like I said,
Same
we were
three
trying to work
people.
it out, and apparently we couldn't work it out. But you know, the great thing about democracy is that the debate will be held certainly on the ballot, and on Thursday, you know, the people who, you know, hopefully again come out and vote, and you know, take a look at our records. I mean, I think our records are out there to be seen. I was a county legislator as well, and I certainly have a record as a county legislator, and something that I'm very, very proud of. I authored the county's Human Rights Commission laws. We locked up guns. You have to have safe storage in Westchester County now because of the work that we've done. Racial profiling laws that I advanced. So we took smoking out of workplaces, and you know, many of these things are things that I sponsored and moved. Human rights, racial profiling, you know, I mean, so I have a record. In fact, I always say even the district now that she represents happened under my watch when I was in the legislature. So after the census, you get a chance to draw the lines, and because I was the chair of legislation and George Latimer was there too, and we realized the need, obviously, for a
For
greater
Hispanic
voice, and you know, it was, you know, my committee that, and in fact, I had that district because I went all the way down
Yep.
to Southwest Yonkers, and I drew the line so that I would go east so that the Hispanic Opportunity District would exist. So I said, I have a legacy everywhere that I've been, that I've left, whether it's Riverfest when I was in the city, or the Human Rights Commission,
Human rights
or
is very important.
you know, I mean, I've left legacy, and here on the state level, we continue to again fight for people, fight for opportunity, fight for education for our children, because I know it's the great equalizer. Fight for the opportunities that allowed for me and even my opponent in America to really rise. So you know, I'm proud of what I've done, and I, you know, hope on Thursday people will give me, you know, again, a chance to go back to Albany and continue to work hard to make their lives better.
So for
Dr.
the
Bob?
record, wait,
Okay.
just one more quick question. Had you had the time and the holiday, would you have done
Yeah.
that debate? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bob?
Yes, well, in the vein of asking the tough questions, I after the press conference that I attended, and you know, several grassroots activists here in Westchester County attended to announce our support for you. I posted a picture on my Facebook page, and to my surprise, someone posted a comment, and that I must admit resonates with a certain kind of criticism that I have voiced continuously, and that is that there's a growing gap between America's elite, or to maybe bring it down a little, our elected officials and everyday citizens.
Sure.
And I'm going to read the quote verbatim, and I want to give you an opportunity to respond because this is a potential voter. Yeah. And he said, and it's underneath the photo, and it says, "You only see her at photo ops, not once in the hood when it's election time, just another politician." And I wanted you to maybe speak to why it is that, maybe, for one, that whether or not that's accurate.
First of all, I live in Yonkers, and I live. I mean, I'm not telling you my address, but to say that I've always.
She lives in
I
the
know.
hood.
I know.
Lives in the hood.
Thank you.
But I know that to be true
I'm just
because
saying.
one day a couple of weeks ago, I know 3 people who, including Bob, who bumped
Yes.
into you in the supermarket.
That's right.
Yes,
Exactly.
2 other people I know bumped into you somewhere else.
Exactly.
Like,
No.
Yeah.
So I mean, like I said, that's the problem. If people don't know you, they see me in photo ops, because
you're everywhere.
I'm everywhere, and like I said, a lot of times I'm in places and doing photo ops or whatever because either people are supporting me or I've supported them. Whether it's through resources or whatever, if they're cutting a ribbon, if they're doing something, chances are, I was helpful in some way. But the reality is no, anybody who's been in Yonkers knows I'm in Yonkers. So what a lot of times I think they also don't understand is that where I do the legislative work is in Albany. And,
Right,
it's not like when I worked for city government, and my job was Yonkers and making sure that community was brought in and so on and so forth. I was in Yonkers all the time, east, west, north, south. When I got elected to the county legislature and I represented part of Yonkers, again, my chief responsibility was Yonkers. Now in the Senate, my office, I have an office in Yonkers,
Right.
but I also do the work in Albany, and we're there 6 months out of the year. So you might have seen me every day when I was, working in City Hall,
Right.
or even as a county legislator.
Right.
But when you're working in a state or a federal level, your place of business is not necessarily your. The other thing that people don't always know is that the district is big. I represent 3 big cities. Yonkers, White Plains, and New Rochelle, a portion of all of them, again, because of the gerrymandering. So I have half of Yonkers, half of New Rochelle, and about 3/4 of White Plains. I have Greenburgh, all the river towns, and I have Scarsdale. So I have a big district, and I have a diverse district. So, to be visible in all of these places is a responsibility that, again, I take very seriously and try and accommodate the needs of all of the various districts that I have. So no, you don't only see me in the hood on photo ops because I actually live I live there. So, and I didn't just move in this week.
Right.
I've pretty much lived on the same street since I've been in Yonkers, quite honestly, and I love my community. I love being there. My kids, we raised our kids there. They went to public schools. I think a lot of people don't realize, my kids graduated from Saunders and School 16 and Pearls and what was Emerson, and I've taught in Lincoln. I'm like really in the community.
We won't go too far and call you, say you're like LL's around the way girl, but you're close by.
Two comments. Caitlin Gleason from Mount Vernon said, "The senator is there whenever you need her. It is impossible for her to be here when she's fighting for us in the state. Go to her office." That was the person's comment to that.
Thank you.
Donna Nolan from Yonkers said that you were a big part in getting the Jimmy Nolan 9/11 bill passed.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I'm glad that Donna, and a big shout out to Donna and her family. They are really incredible champions in terms of, again, community. And I know they suffered a great loss, but they are very, very brave and valiant, even despite that. But yeah, I mean, when I first got wasn't even first, it was, a few years into it, but I met Jimmy Nolan, and the bill was not able to be passed before, and I picked up the bill when I came in to the Senate, and what had happened is there was a cutoff date for people who were suffering from 9/11 related illnesses that had expired. And I met Jimmy Nolan, Donna's husband. He made sure that I came and saw his array of medicines because he had worked down at the site, with no masks and everything else. He's a carpenter, and next thing he knows, he's got every symptom, and the cutoff date was there. And so it was that knowledge, and then, working with my colleagues in the Senate and so on. So little did I know that at that time that it was really the mayor, at that time Mayor Bloomberg, who was concerned about the passage, because when you open it up, they had cut it off in terms of who could come forward. And when you open it up again, all of a sudden, he was concerned that the liability in New York City would just be overwhelming. But Governor Patterson, the Senate, and that goes back to who's in the majority. So we got in the majority, the Senate Democrats got in the majority for just 2 years. And I carried that bill, and I begged Governor Patterson on behalf of Jimmy Nolan and all of the people who were being diagnosed and were no longer able to claim anything to really sign that bill. And Governor Patterson did sign the bill. And it led to the Droga Act, because then Mayor Bloomberg got very serious. Like, okay, if this is really going to happen, we need help from the national government. And so then that's what happened. It went on a national level, and that's the Droga Act. So as I said, there's so many ways that you can impact people's lives. You see something that's wrong, and you try and now, obviously, I mean, I've gone to, there's a wake, a funeral in the past just 2 or 3 weeks of first responders right here in Westchester County who succumbed to 9/11 related illnesses. I mean, it is really an issue, but I'm very, very proud to have been able to help her husband and others.
Real quick, I have a comment, and then I have a comment from the audience. I also wanted to, while we were mentioning the Nolan family, the 18th, September 18th, is the 3-year anniversary of Michael's death, murder. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
And acknowledge that. Sean Patterson Howard said, "Thank you for spearheading the founding of SNUG, also supporting substance abuse prevention programs like Clubhouse, Common Sense, Gun Control, Child Care, Health Equality, Education, etc."
Wow. And you got a couple of well wishes and people that are saying they're going to support you 100%. The Blackman family, Edna Duran.
Of course. I saw something.
The Blackman family, Edna, Cicely Greaves Vega, and Tasha Diaz all sent their love and said you have their full support.
Oh, thank you. I tell you, this is really welcome to hear from so many people that have, we've been in each other's lives over the years. Sometimes you lose contact with them. So a big shout out to all of them. I know I hadn't seen Edna for a while, and I met some family members. Yeah, they were saying, so it's good. And Cecily, I heard from through someone else today. So I appreciate it. And the Blackman family, we've worked together for such a long time. I know.
You're like the
such
daughter.
a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and Sean.
You and Sima, yeah.
I was really, I appreciate Sean bringing up SNUG, because that's what she's talking about. So SNUG was a program that I brought to Yonkers many years ago. It's guns spelled backwards.
Right.
And it is, built on the ceasefire model. I think that was in Chicago, but basically it uses people in community to stem gang violence, and they're called violence interrupters,
Yeah.
So
Frontline did a program on it.
What's that?
PBS Frontline did
Yes.
a documentary
Yes.
that everyone should check out.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, and so I brought Snug into Yonkers and have been able to, sustain it with the funding over the years, and the city now is also helping. And of course, Sean and the Y do an incredible job with it, and making sure that they're out there all the time. And yeah, I was even at the last two. I was at Grant Park, so, for the person who thinks I'm not in the hood. I was
You was just in
I was just in Grand Park.
Okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't a photo op. I was there, and then I was in Serrano Park
Oh,
2 weeks before that. So
I want, and I have to say this to you on the air. So because I've heard this, Caitlin Gleason is the one who just texted me to make sure I mentioned this. But I have heard it before. In the beginning, we started this show August 3rd, 2014. We started Black Westchester in 2014. In July of 2014, a lot of people did not take us serious. A lot of people did not take our show serious. On episode 10, you are our guest, and a lot of people took us a little more serious because they said we had a guest of your caliber,
Yes.
and it is true. You are one of the first to believe in us and power. You know what I'm saying?
Of course.
So that I want to say thank you as well and bring that up because it has been said there was, we had a couple of shows, people watched it, but they didn't take it serious.
Right.
But when they saw the senator on, they were like, oh, wow.
Right.
They mean business. They're for real. So you kind of co-sign your appearance kind of gave us credibility. So
Well, like I said, I'm a former journalist. I might have mentioned this to you before.
Yes.
I've had so many hats, and I'm grateful for all of them. But I know how important it is for people to, have a voice, and and I know how hard it is
absolutely.
to really sustain, some credible communication and not have the support. And as long as you're trying to do the right thing, I want to support it. So
And when we came out with the paper in
Yeah.
August 2017,
good for you. Yeah.
thanks to Lorraine Lopez,
Yeah.
what I do?
the senator took out an ad, and she was
I did.
not
I
running for
did.
office, and she took out a full-page ad. She
So
took out a
you-
full-page
You hear that,
ad
people?
just to congratulate us and talk
That's
about the
right.
great
For
work we
being-
do.
yeah.
And that was with the ad. You and as well as then Senator Latimer also took out a full-page ad just to congratulate us for coming out with the paper. And that was important. Neither one of y'all were running for a race at
No,
the time.
no.
So it wasn't you promoting yourself. You
No.
spent that money just to support us
Yeah,
in our
no.
first in our endeavor. So in closing, I want, for those who don't know how to reach you, how do people reach you, your website, any social media, anything that they can get in touch with you beyond this point before
I'm sorry I don't have, but I do have. I have a Facebook page, so they can Andrea Stewart Cousins. They will find me there.
well, I think it's Andrea Stewart Cousins 2018 is the campaign.
2018 is
Yeah, yeah,
campaign,
yeah.
and then I have.
He
I
said
have
thumbs up. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And then of course, I also have a website, Facebook, just for my Senate
Right.
page. So again, Andrea Stewart Cousins, you'll find me there. My telephone number is 914-423-4031. Again, I'm right here in Yonkers. My office it's in downtown Yonkers.
'Cause when we drop our papers at the library,
That's
I think
right.
you're one
I'm
of the
right
next,
behind the
you're one of
library, yes,
you're
so-
one of the next stops. We make sure we drop copies at your office.
So I mean, like I said, I'm here, and with the help of the people who I represent, I will continue to be here, and hopefully we will just again make progress together.
And last question, I just want to ask you. So why should people vote for you? Just so you know, why? Tell the people why.
Why not?
No, not why.
Just
Not,
saying.
but why?
Well, I think we're just in a really critical time in our national history. I think there's a real fight about what America means and who should be able to participate and who should benefit. And you need to have folks who not only understand the progress that we've made, but understand it so deeply that they will stand up and fight for it, not just for themselves, but for everyone. And fighting on all fronts, who has the relationships with all different types of people, different levels of government, and so on and so forth, and who can really bring people together so that we can not only get past this point, but continue to move America forward so that it really is, the dream that that we talk about for our posterity, for our children, for our grandchildren. So I've done work, like they say in the Bible, you know them by their fruit.
Yes.
And I believe over my years of public service, I have, demonstrated that, my work is fruitful, and it is fruitful on behalf of people.
And part two to that, and it just reminded, there's been a generational shift in politics, and even Black Lives Matter stepping up and trying to take power from the Al Sharpton generation.
Right.
So what I hear are two things. A lot of people are saying, we're tired of career politicians.
Right.
Your opponent is younger than you.
Right.
And one of the things is we need fresh blood in that position.
But the opponent is a career politician as well.
No, but I know, but I'm just saying, and this is a general, not just,
right.
I use that example, but because she is younger. And,
right.
But on a general, in the mayoral race in Mount Vernon, one of the things was that the current mayor was younger than,
right.
And he had been there for a long time. We
right.
needed new. So what do you say to that as far as why they should vote for you? And as far as
again, I think that, if this was just a contest to age who's younger, then yeah, she's younger. But but the reality is, again, I've demonstrated my ability. I think that people, and that's why we have elections. I think that people are with you, as long as you're with them.
Right.
And I've seen people look at what you bring to the table and make those decisions. And I've had the conversation, good conversation with the new Congresswoman-elect Alessandra Ocasio-Cortez. She and I had a long conversation last week. And, last week, when she was at an event, she was talking about how women, have been moving up. And when she evoked some names of women, she evoked Carolyn Maloney and me.
Right.
So even the younger generation has respect for people who have actually, gone through it and accomplished something.
Now, I get accused of, from Lorraine and Bob, that I never let them get their questions in. And Bob has been eagerly waiting to ask something over there, so I'm pointing him out so he can ask the last question. Go ahead.
Besides the importance of spearheading a kind of united fight against the regressive forces
right.
That are emerging both at the national and at the state level here in the United States. What are the legislative priorities that you'll have should you be reelected and elected to majority leader and hold the gavel in your hand?
Well, again, in a place like Westchester, taxes and keeping it affordable is extremely important. As I said, education, which is the great equalizer, is extremely important. Election reforms, extremely important. Things like, again, dealing with climate change, is extremely, extremely important. Healthcare, incredibly important. Affordability in housing, incredibly important. So, I have an agenda that I think speaks to, again, the needs of people as well as the county that we're in and the state that we know is a great economic engine. And we just want to make sure that we continue to move that ball forward and include people in the process. The other reason that I think it's important to reelect me again, Westchester has never been this close to having a seat at the table in terms of leadership of state government. That's the reality. There's never been a leader from Westchester County in that room. So, I talk about being a woman leader, but the fact is that we will have a voice in policy that we've never had before. And I think that's important.
I want to follow up. One of the issues that I've followed at a distance with respect to political reforms, that my sense is that many Democrats and Republicans have been a little slow-footed to embrace, is the call to sever the control of the county committees from control of the County Board of Elections. Right now, as it currently stands, you can both serve as the leader of the county parties and also serve as the commissioner for the respective parties at the Board of Elections. Because many of us have been very integrally involved with some of the local elections, we felt that it gives the county commissioners an opportunity to put their thumbs on the scale, and that it puts them in a real conflict of interest, where they're both trying to ensure the sanctity of the democratic process while also possibly, pushing their preferred candidate forward. And my personal concern is that when this happens, it opens up the parties to undue influence by moneyed forces. Because, if you get your guy, in there who's going to support, for example, very generous development policies, you may receive something on the back end. It's kind of opens us all up to a kind of quid pro quo. And I wanted to know, what is your feelings about the proposal to reform the operations of state government in this way?
Are you talking about state government or county government?
I know that there's a bill I think this is a matter that is under the purview of the state government.
That impacts the county
Yes.
government.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so again, I have not had a conversation with anyone about that. I would certainly be happy to look into it, campaign finance reform and all kinds of ways that we can bring more transparency and stronger ethics into all levels of government is extremely important to me. So I'll make a deal that I will look at that and
No, you'll forgive me. I couldn't resist.
No, I mean,
Right. No, I
that's the
understand.
point, right? I
Right.
mean, we at least need to look at it and, let's
see what we can
let's
do.
see what happens.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say, and I'm going to put it out, I want to say so people don't, have anything to say later. I specifically today, I have 3 very important guests. This is the last Sunday before the primary.
Okay.
I'm trying to get in as much as possible. So people have called. I am not taking calls, but if they wrote their comments, I try to get as many of them in. If you have 3 or 4 calls and they all take 2-3 minutes,
I know.
that's less time for me to.
I know.
So specifically, someone we spoke of is asking for the number and asking everybody on here for the number. I told him specifically yesterday, I told you we weren't taking any calls. And I didn't want anybody to see that, like I'm ignoring it, or
I
to
got
use
you.
that against you to say, oh, he wouldn't even give the number so we could call in.
I see.
I said there would be no call. I said, right. And Donna Nolan also, she didn't even know we was having this conversation, but she pushed back and said, there is no number. Just write your comment. You write your question here. So, so anyway, I just wanted to say that. And I want to thank you as always
Thank
for
you
coming.
so much. Amy.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
I wish you well.
Thank you. I appreciate
I really would like to see history made.
that. Thank you.
You've worked hard for that position, and I believe everybody. I can't tell you who to vote for, but everybody needs to go out and vote in
Absolutely.
the primary Thursday
That's right.
and in the November election, and not just in these local elections. We have people around the state. I keep saying that, and around the country that listen from Baltimore and other places. There are so many Senate, so many congressional seats that
That's
we
right.
need to come out strong
That's right.
to vote for, because the midterms we don't come out strong for.
That's
and we
right.
need to be, if you're tired of what's going on the national level, you need to come out strong. You can stay home and complain, or you come out strong and vote
And actually
in this
vote.
election. And that's what I have to say. Again, thank you for coming.
Thank you
and
so
I
much.
wish
It's
you the
always
best.
a pleasure.
And
Thank
and
you.
when and if you become the majority, I hope you make this your stop first, and we can congratulate you, and we can talk
We
about
can have the
your
applause.
yeah, the whole nine. So, other people are saying
thank you.
love you. They're saying your name. Thank you for your services for over the years.
That's so nice.
My representative, Rue Ross. The question was asked. You can go back and watch in the beginning. We did cover the debate question. And it's been asked and answered, so you can watch the show afterwards and you can get her answer on that.
Can I just say something?
Yes, because we have another guest.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go.
Oh no, I just want to say prior to you coming in earlier, I was talking about doing an event for Mark Molinaro and Julie Killian, and because, as you know, I'm still a Republican.
No, I didn't know that.
I'm a Republican.
But that's okay.
She's our resident Republican. She apologizes for
I
it.
forgot.
She apologizes. She's our resident Republican.
No,
but also
but
I don't look at people as their
We
parties.
tease her
you know
with
what
about
I
it,
mean?
but,
It's
you know,
just-
I get. Believe me, they get on me. All
Once
the
we got
time.
her buddy out of there on the county level.
I'm not a Trump Republican.
No, but once we got
I'm a
her buddy out
McCain
as the
Republican.
executive, once we got her executive buddy out of there, we have no problems.
But I just want to let all my friends and my family that listen and are watching to please go out and vote and support Andrea Stewart Cousins. And if they need a ride, they know they can reach me. I know I've got a couple of soldiers out there that have been working and are working hard, and they're going to continue to work hard all the way through Thursday and then continue on until November. And I just want to put it out there that if you have any questions or anything, just hit me up and I'll explain to you why. But I think that the majority of people already know.
Well, thank you, Lorraine. Like I said, I stopped looking at you as a party for a long time. I mean, I've known you.
Thank you, because
for
I'm so
long.
overprotective of her.
That's right.
It's like,
we've known each other for a very, very long
30
time
years.
through ups and downs and sideways,
Yes.
and I don't even.
30
Never
years
even
is a
thought
long
about
time.
it. It
Yeah, and
has-
I
and
never
it's been-
think about it. When I think of you, I don't think
No.
about it like, oh my God,
No.
I'm a Republican.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, right.
I don't think like that either.
You didn't have to. Yeah, but it's important that people realize it's a Democratic primary.
Yes.
So if you're
That's
a
why I'm
registered
reaching out
Democrat,
to all my Democratic friends.
then absolutely, please
Yes.
come out, and I will ask them to please vote for me. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you, Abel.
So as we are introducing our next guest, we're making way for our next guest. I'm going to ask these two to continue the conversation so I can get my picture for the paper.
And I want to say my
You go ahead then.
No, I
Oh,
want to say what
well-
you do, Bob.
well, wonderful. I mean, because I'm with the general, because you got soldiers, girl. One of the things that I wanted to say, to keep with the theme of the importance of elections, is that as my knowledge and understanding of the political process have grown, I've become aware of the importance not just of the vote for elective office, but also vote for key positions within the party apparatus itself. Specifically, we're going to have a vote in the primary for district leaders.
Yes.
And I know that if we want to see a vigorous party system where people are actually in touch with the needs, desires, wishes of the residents in their local areas, and that's also going to require that we make it a point of duty to give thought to who we want on the grassroots, to go out there and do the petition signing and do the get out the vote drives, because too often it seems to me that there's been an actual weakening of the party machinery over the decades. And if we want a political system whereby people can communicate their needs at times when our elected officials don't actually have the time to come out to local communities because they may find themselves in legislative session in Albany or in Washington, D.C., then that means that we've got to have district leaders who have their ear to the ground, know the issues and concerns of people, and are helping to cultivate ties with some of the party higher-ups. And so that's a plug for everyone to be sure to give some thought to who you're going to be voting for a district leader in your respective districts.
And our next guest is in the waiting area. If you please come in. I know she has a certain time limitation.
How are you?
Very good. How are you?
Pleasure.
Dr. Bob.
Thank
Pleasure to meet you.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me on.
So we have met a couple of times.
Yes,
once
we
at
have.
Maggie's and once and I forgot some
Throwing
event
them back?
that they had at
at
Andre's building
That's right.
for some women. There
It
was
was a judge.
okay. Anyway, it was
Forgetting
an event.
her
It was an
name right
event
now.
at
That's
Andre
right.
Wallace's building.
That's
yes,
exactly
yes,
right. That was a while ago. That was
Yeah.
probably March or February.
yes,
maybe?
yes,
That was
yes.
a
And
long
then
time
again
ago.
at Maggie's where I got
That's
to hear
right.
you speak.
That's right.
So, first name, I never say your first name right. 'Cause I always call you by your last name.
You can call me by my last
Yeah,
name.
yeah.
Some people call me AB for sure, but
Okay.
my full name is Alessandra Biaggi.
Alessandra Biaggi.
That's it.
Welcome to the show. Let
Thank
me-
you.
yeah. And
That's
you have-
one. That's the name of one of Mount Vernon's famous, Anthony Butler, AB. So
Oh,
you're,
AB,
you're in good
yeah,
company.
yeah.
Awesome. I like it. I like it.
So you are running for the seat currently held by Senator Jeff Klein. What district is that? What?
That is Senate District 34.
And that district covers what?
That district, it's a very gerrymandered district, which probably does not surprise anybody
Anyone.
who's listening.
Right.
It includes Westchester, so all of Pelham, Pelham Manor, Chester Park, and then a little bit of Mount Vernon. It's Fleetwood, and then it's mainly in the Bronx. So it's Riverdale, a little bit of Kingsbridge, Castle Hill, Park, Chester, Bedford Park, Westchester Square, City Island, Pelham Parkway, Pelham Bay, Country Club, Morris Park, Throgs Neck, Hunts Point, Rikers Island. It's a very, very, very
Wow.
diverse, very diverse, very gerrymandered district. And it's really hard because a lot of people in District 34 don't know that they're part of District 34 because there's really not, I mean, across really many of the state Senate districts, nobody is very familiar with where they're from because you could be across the street from somebody else who has a different state senator than you because of the way the lines have been drawn,
Right.
which is a problem. So what this campaign, my campaign has been trying to do is really bridge the gaps between the communities because what I have seen and what we all have seen is that the issues across no matter where you are, they're very much the same, and we want to make sure that people can be in community together to talk about these things because that makes them feel less alone. It makes them feel like they have a support system and they have people there who want to listen to them because if people just want to be heard, and it doesn't matter whether you go to Hunts Point, Pelham, Mount Vernon, Castle Hill, everybody wants the same things. They want a high quality of life. They want to make sure that their kids can go to a good school. They don't want to be in debt. They want to be able to have health care that protects them, and they deserve that. Everybody in this district deserves that. So that's what we're fighting for every single day in this
Okay.
campaign.
Bob, you want to start the questions off?
Yes. So some people have confused, have seen you as a kind of local manifestation of Ocasio.
Uh-huh.
And have really looked forward to your candidacy, believing, perhaps even hoping that you might be a standard bearer of the democratic socialist tradition that Ocasio represents, and everyone will forgive me for forgetting her full name.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you very much, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
You got it.
But I wanted to hear.
I know our names
I'm
are
sorry,
very
I gotta
similar.
think on my feet, y'all, and I'm not doing it so well today. But I wanted to really add. That gives me an opportunity to ask you to share with us. What is your political philosophy? Are you a part of that leftward lurch that seems to be occurring in the Democratic Party? I guess that's enough.
This is a good question, and I like this question because it gives me the opportunity to share that I am a real Democrat. I am a progressive Democrat. I'm not a socialist. But the things that I'm fighting for, and I use the word real Democrat, it's probably very clear as to why I'm using that word,
Not
right?
Democrat
Because of
in
who
name
I'm-
only.
That's right, not Democrat in name only, not someone that runs as a Democrat and then goes to Albany and does something else. But because a lot of the things that I'm fighting for are very much progressive. And I mean, even, the New York Health Act, which I care very much about, it would create a single payer system in New York State, Medicare for all, because I believe that healthcare is a basic human right. Maybe some would say that that's, a socialistic way of doing medicine, but when you look at the numbers of that, it's actually a fiscally responsible way to make healthcare affordable to people. It would save 98% of New Yorkers on healthcare costs, and it would create jobs. And so this is something that is very important to me. And also, I think, Medicare for all, as it's been polled lately, actually, is a very popular policy, not only in the Democratic Party, but also in the Republican Party. And that's been very exciting to watch. But definitely a Democrat, a progressive Democrat, and very proud of it.
Wonderful, wonderful. What other kind of policy proposals will you champion, should you win the election, that cuts across the various racial, ethnic class lines that do in fact separate the various constituents who will, who are in your district, should you win?
Education, education, education. I have not stopped talking about the full funding of our public schools since day one of this campaign. It is very important to me and to my campaign that every single child and every single zip code has access to quality education. It should not matter where you are born. That determines whether you have certain opportunities. And what we're seeing across many Senate districts is, and in District 34 where I'm running, is that the district is owed $88 million in public school funding. Now, if you go to certain places like maybe Pelham or Riverdale, when there's funding gaps there, a lot of the parents will come together and they'll say, okay, what do we need to do? How do we make sure that all the students have what they need? How do we make sure that they have their supplies and whatever it may be? But if you go to Castle Hill and Hunts Point, those parents do not have the time to be not only coming to PTA meetings, but they don't have the resources to be able to provide, extra amounts of money into their students' education. And so making sure that we fully fund our public schools from the state budget is a high priority of mine. So that's the first thing, because we all know that education is one of the best ways to not only come out of poverty, but to just create a future that has possibility and opportunity, and education is the place that we can start that. So that's one of them. Housing. So it really doesn't matter where you live in this district. You could live in Westchester, you could live in the Bronx. There is clearly an affordability crisis when it comes to housing. You don't have to go left or right on the street. It seems that houses that are just, in places that really never were desirable are $1 million just for a 2-bedroom apartment. It is alarming to me as someone who's young. I'm 32 years old, recently engaged, do not have children yet, want to have a family.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I got engaged the same week that I decided to run for office, so it's been a wild year, although wedding next year. But I think about this and I think I want a family. I want to be able to give them, my children, every opportunity that I've had too, and yet I look around and I think I have law school loans, over $180,000. Everywhere we turn, it's almost impossible to even find an apartment that's affordable. And so these are things that I think about and I wonder, how are we going to be able to do it? And housing in New York State is just, especially in the New York City area and in Westchester County, is becoming really almost it's out of touch really with the majority of people. And that's a problem. And so some of the ways I want to fix that in the state Senate, there are a lot of laws that can help people, especially in the Bronx. There are loopholes in our rent laws. We can end vacancy decontrol and eviction bonuses and preferential rent, and we can repeal the Erdstat law. These are all bills really that would provide protections for tenants who are living paycheck to paycheck and just want to make sure that they're in a home that they can stay in. But unfortunately, these loopholes allow for landlords to raise the rent 20%. It gives them incentives to push them out because then they can pull it off of the rent stabilization unit database. And so in the past 10 years or so, we've lost, I think, 95,000 rent stabilized units in New York City. And that's housing for 300,000 people. So where are these people going, right? These are our homes. A lot of people are homeless. Not because they don't have a job, not because they're lazy, not because of any reason other than the fact that the cost of living has become unbearable. And so as a leader and as someone who would be elected, these are at the top of the list, because without having the basic needs met, you cannot even start to think about your happiness. You cannot even start to think about innovation and the future. And if we really want to be a state that pushes forward through what's coming and think about the future of work and the future of the way that New York State can be a leader, we got to make sure that basic needs are met. And our state government is absolutely poised to do this. And so that would be something that I would champion, because it's just too important right now.
Now, so support it or no support, still got to ask you the hard questions.
Yes,
So-
please
so
do.
One of the criticisms as a relative of yours
Mm-hmm.
who was arrested for corruption, and because of that, they're like, the apple doesn't fall far, and this, that, and the other, and don't vote for her because, there'll be continuation of that. And I would like to give you an opportunity to speak to that.
Thank you. I appreciate that, actually. So my grandfather and I were very close, and I loved my grandfather dearly. And I can't think, honestly, of anybody who doesn't love or adore their grandfather or even grandmother. And what I will say to that is this. My grandfather made mistakes that
What
my
was your
family...
grandfather's
My
name?
grandfather was Mario Biaggi, Congressman
Okay.
Mario Biaggi, yes.
Okay.
He's no longer with us. He passed away in 2015. He was 97 years old.
Okay.
Because of his older age, I was able to actually have a relationship with him. But to what I was saying, my grandfather made mistakes that my family has had to pay for significantly. And from those mistakes come a lot of learnings. And that is primarily why not only am I incredibly careful, but I appreciate and understand and want to fight to make sure that we actually have ethics reform in our government, that we actually have campaign finance reform in our government, that our rules are clear, that there is no gray area when it comes to elected officials, because a lot of our ethics reform, unfortunately, is not strong enough, actually, even to allow for laws to even be what's the word I'm looking for? To really lay down. So, for example, right, the Attorney General in New York State will often say it's really hard to press charges against state legislators because they're the ones creating the laws, and it's like the fox guarding the hen house. What I really want to do is make sure that the laws are clear, that we understand where the lines are, because it's very easy for people to cross the line, and I want to make sure never to cross the line. But just going back to the beginning of this, I was 2 years old when that happened, so obviously, at 2 years old, I really didn't know very much about what was going on. But that entire experience has shaped the way that I see politics. It has shaped the way that I understand how you can really cross that line. And then on the flip side, I've seen the good that he's done, which is why I'm here today. Because I cannot tell you, there's not a day that I walk through the street where I do not have somebody stop me and say, "Your grandfather was Mario? He helped my son get into West Point," or "He helped my son get a job," or "We were at the bottom of the barrel and we had nothing left, and he helped us to get a job," or "He got us an apartment," or whatever it may be. So the feeling there is very real, and it really makes me feel good, and it also shows me what it means to be a leader of the people, because he never turned anybody away, and that's exactly how I want to lead as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
And
asking that
I
question.
wanted to, because when I spoke your name a few times, some people brought that to my attention, sending me all kinds of articles.
Yes.
Some people actually wanted Black Westchester to cover that during the campaign, like, "Oh, you're not, giving everybody the full story. You're not doing the news because you're not talking about who Harrell." So I wanted you to talk about that.
And I appreciate that. And I am someone who believes that the future of our party needs to be diverse, transparent, compassionate, and the transparent part is very important to me. And so there's nothing to hide here. That is what it is, and I am proud to be his granddaughter. And I also learned a lot from what happened to him and to my family, and so that's part of the reason why I'm here, because there's two sides to it, right? There's a side that you learn the lessons from, and there's a side of the good, and there's a deep amount of good that is still very much resonating, not only in the Bronx but across this entire district. I mean, in places that I never would have thought, with even Republicans, which is really, that's probably one of the most inspiring things, because he helped everybody. It didn't make a difference where you were from, inside the district, outside the district, political party, did not matter. And that's exactly the type of leader that I want to be.
Okay. Shout out to State Senator Jamal Bailey, who's just tuned in. Saw him yesterday at Rappacon. I definitely got a big up. Yeah, got a big up Rappacon at the end of the show, but saw him, and he was introducing the DJs, the battles of the sound systems, and
And we look forward to the senator coming to the radio show to share with our audience some of the legislative agenda that he's advanced since he was elected to office a couple
I just
years
want to
ago.
acknowledge a couple other elected officials. Yonkers City Council President Mike Cater, White Plains City Council member Nadine Hunt Robinson is on the check-in. I think that is all the
My
elected
daughter,
officials.
my daughter.
Mount Vernon City Judge Adrian, I did see her name. That did popped up. Mount Vernon City Judge Adrian Armstrong is also checking out the show.
Okay.
I was just trying to make sure, I acknowledged our elected officials. And they're all tuned in right now.
I just
Bob's gonna take
I just wanted to interject that while family history is always an important consideration whenever we're reviewing person's qualification for any position that they hold, a basic principle of justice and fairness is that we don't hold the sons and daughters guilty for the sins and misdeeds and mistakes, and granddaughters for the mistakes of their forebears. And if we are going to be fair to Sister Biaggi, then we've got to let her stand on her own record.
That's right.
And we don't vote for people because they're former. We found out the second President Bush didn't hold a candle to his father.
That's
And,
right.
and I'm saying it here. The current governor doesn't hold a candle to his father. I didn't always agree with his father's policies,
Second
but
Bush
his
was
father.
cool.
Yeah, but he wasn't the man his father was, though.
Yeah,
He
I
was
think-
nowhere near the man his father was.
Depends. on
No,
who
he
you
was
talk
not the
to.
man his father. And but
Depends on who you
especially
talk
in
to.
but especially going in New York, the current governor is not the man that his father was, who I did not always see eye to eye on his policies, but I have a lot of respect for. A lot more than the son that's currently in office. That's so. It goes both ways, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely goes both ways, and I think that's exactly the point, right? I think it's that experience is really why I'm here, because I grew up with politics all around me. I mean, it was spoken at the dinner table. There wasn't a conversation that was had without being asked, okay, this is your problem. What are you going to do about it? What's your service? How are you going to actually take that thing and transform it into something that raises it, that makes it better? And that's exactly right. I am Alessandra Biaggi. I am not Mario Biaggi, and I am very proud to be running for this state Senate seat.
Good for you.
Any questions, Lorraine? And I'm being careful because I always get yelled at because I never let Bob.
Behind the scenes, though.
I never let Bob.
After
Bob
the
and
show.
Lorraine, I never let them. I monopolize it, and I never give them questions. So
Now we're on the
I
spot.
don't yell at you,
Yeah,
AJ.
yeah, so-
I have no idea what you're talking about.
yeah, and then I'm going to hear about this after the
dare
show.
you.
I'm going to hear about this after the show, though. So
You have
yeah.
to call me out like that when I've never done anything like that. When you get to the Senate, suppose the other 7 members or whatever, the other 8 members out of I think it was out of 9, decide that they want to do the IDC again, and they come to you and they say, hey, Alessandra, we'll make you the leader.
Hell no.
Okay.
Hell no. That will never happen. What has happened in our state Senate with 8 Democrats that we all elected as Democrats, and you can take Simca and maybe add 9, which is what I think
Yeah.
you're referring to. But the 8 IDC members who we voted for as Democrats, we elected as Democrats, and then they went to Albany and they created this coalition to empower the Republicans without really being transparent, talk about transparency and accountability, without being transparent about it to their voters. It's stealing votes. And so not only would I not do that, but I don't believe a true progressive would do that. And I'm a Democrat, and the idea that in order to work across the aisles that you have to make a deal like that, I really disagree. I think that right now what we need more than ever is crossing the aisle to make sure that we work together. But that doesn't mean that you betray your party. It doesn't mean that you take away the ability for the first woman, the first black woman, to be the leader of a majority conference. And I will go there because I think it's an important topic, and this is part of the reason why I'm in this race, because in 2012, when the Senate Democrats had a majority, we had 33 seats. That was the exact moment in time that my opponent said, you know what, I'm going to take away 4 other Democrats and I'm going to go and create this coalition with the Republicans. And instead of voting for Senator Stuart Cousins, who could have at that time in 2012, right? Now we're in 2018, so think about how long it's been. In 2012, could have been the first majority leader that was a woman, that was a black woman in New York State. He took that away from her. And for 8 years went on to not only continue to grow the IDC, but to make it have enough power, so much so that he had a seat at that budget table and didn't allow her to have a seat at that budget table. And I think talking about that is important because so much of what goes on in Albany is this boys club, and there's 4 men in a room, and that's how it's been, and that's the culture, and that's a lot of the reason why I think people don't want to, or they turn off Albany, or they turn it off. They say, it's never going to change. And I disagree with that. I think that one of the ways that we stop that is we make sure that we not only have the right people in these seats, but we have people in these seats that when they say the thing that they are, right, they make that pledge, I am a Democrat or I am a Republican, it doesn't matter what side you're on, that you actually are that specific leader. And so, no. That's a long answer, but
Awesome
I would never
answer.
do that.
Awesome.
Let me ask you a question. And
Yes.
I was trying to figure it out in my head because the leader of the party in the state is our former guest. So I'm obviously
That's right.
not talking about her, but I wanted to use an example. In the national level, Republicans will not push back against anything on the president, even those who believe that there's
Right.
something wrong,
Right.
but they still toe the
That's a
party
problem.
line. And again, this is not about our past guests, but this is just an example. If there was a Democrat that was crossing the line on that level the president is, would you not speak up and toe the party line, or would you hold that person accountable as you are elected to do?
Hold them accountable. So I actually see this less as a political thing, so less as a party thing, and more of an integrity issue, an accountability issue, and being independently minded. Part of the reason why we elect our leaders is because we want them to also have a mind of their own, right? To think, we elect them because we feel aligned with their values, but then when they go to Albany, at least I believe this is what I want my leader to go in and say, what is going on and how does this affect my district and the bigger picture, which is in the state Senate, the entire state, at the federal level, right? The entire country, and honestly, the entire world, because a lot of what happens at the federal level affects the international stage.
Absolutely.
And so what's going on, with the Republicans not being able to call out the president, listen, I get it, you're in your party, but this is a politically unprecedented time, and a lot of the things that the president is saying are racist, they are sexist, they are embarrassing, and they are, if you want to call yourself Christian, I'm Roman Catholic, it's not even Christian-like. So it really,
I don't think he ever pretended to be Christian.
a lot of his followers are, right? So it doesn't make sense to me, other than they want to just, continue to hold on to the power. And I understand that, but this is too important. I can't imagine being in a seat and not making a decision because I wanted to hold on to the seat, knowing that it was the wrong decision to make. I can't imagine.
Let me ask you a question. Another question. We talked about Democrats running as Democrats and then intending to, give their support to the Republicans. Now, I'm just giving you a scenario because I don't know when and where this would actually happen. But in a situation, because I think a lot of the Republicans, again, on the national level are wrong, if the Democrats were on the wrong side of something and it affected your district that elected you, would you toe the line because you're a Democrat? Or would you, even if it meant being called out for breaking party, but it was the right thing to do because it was wrong for your district, how would you do it?
So this question is so present because running this race right now is doing exactly that, right? So I want to share why it resonates with me. When I decided to run for this seat, it was after having worked as an attorney for Governor Cuomo's office. And I was working on different pieces of legislation, the Reproductive Health Act, which would codify Roe v. Wade, the Comprehensive Contraceptive Coverage Act, which would allow women to have access to contraception, immigration bills, and just a whole bunch of things. And I just got to the end of the legislative session and I thought to myself, how could it be that in New York State we don't have these basic laws that Democrats in the majority want, right? And it's because of this group of 8 state senators who are Democrats that we've elected as Democrats who have given the power to the Republicans. Now, I decided to leave that office because my state senator for my entire life was the person who created this group and was, really making all of New Yorkers more vulnerable. As soon as I decided to run, not only was I told no, I was told, how dare you? It's not your turn. You'll never raise any money. Nobody will ever be with you. You won't have any endorsements. Get in line. Not the time to be running against a Democrat, to which I said, I'm not running against a Democrat. I'm running against a Republican. He has proven himself through his record. And just a lot of crazy things. And I mean, this is like establishment Democrats. I am a Democrat. I am proud to be a Democrat, and that threw me off because that made me think, am I doing something bad? And I had to stop literally in real time and say, no, I'm not. I get it. When you're part of an establishment for a very long period of time, you want to protect your own. But what we are seeing now, and we are now 9.5 months into this race, we have individuals who are part of the Democratic Party who are standing next to me and endorsed my campaign to say that behavior is not only wrong, but we need to make sure that we have a Democratic state Senate that we can trust, that we have people in these seats that we can trust are actually Democrats. And so what I'm doing right now, I believe, is the best thing for the district, because the district right now has been represented by somebody who has not put the interests of tenants first. He's put the interests of real estate developers first, who have not put the interests of public school children first, has put the interests of charter school owners first, and hedge fund managers. And listen, there's nothing wrong with those people, but the problem that I have with this is that you come into the district and you say you care about these things, and you make people believe that you're going to fight for them, and then when you go to Albany, you do the completely opposite thing, and that's a problem. And so I would say that this race is kind of like a stand up against that, and it's very much against. I mean, the party is divided right now in terms of who's on which side, but I believe that there's a good side and that there's a bad side, and we're trying to fight for the best.
Let me ask you the question in another way,
Sure.
too. Okay, so would you rubber stamp whatever that your party wanted just because the party wanted it, even if you felt, you, the person, the elected official, felt that it really wasn't good for your district? Would you rubber stamp it just to go along with the party, just to support the party because you're supposed to toe the line?
So, no.
Okay.
And that doesn't mean I would vote with Republicans. What it means is I vote my conscience and understand. The most important thing to me is having an ear to the ground and being able to understand what the needs of the district are, right? So that means that if the district needs something and the majority of Democrats are, I don't know, I can't even think of an example, honestly, because I feel like so much of what the Democrats do I'm so aligned with.
Right.
But I can never imagine just voting a certain way simply because everybody else does. That following mentality, that is not the way that my mind has ever thought, and that's not the way that I've ever led.
And I ask that a lot because of what's going on the national level. We're seeing that with the Republicans.
Yes.
And the Republicans are actually accusing the Democrats
Right.
of that. But when they were in control, and it was the other way around, I mean, it seemed that way too.
Yeah.
So, I just wanted to, personalize that to you.
I appreciate that. I mean, we saw this with the tax bill, also with the health bill, making sure that people's lives are safe, that people have access to health care, that we're not harming people in the way that we legislate should be the highest priority to all of us. And the way that we should think about leading is, if I say yes or no to something, how does this affect the human beings behind this decision? Because that's, at the end of the day, it's not just words on a piece of paper. There are human beings behind so much of what we do, and I feel like we've really lost touch with that, and that's a problem. And so a lot of what I want to do as well is humanize policy and think about even the words that we use in our legislation. Are these words compassionate? Do these words make people feel taken care of and held? Are we holding space for everybody's opinions to come to the table? I mean, I think that that's such a big, it's a big priority of all of us, but if we're actually going to run campaigns and be leaders of the people and have grassroots movements and be part of a movement, then we're going to have to do it differently. And part of doing it differently is thinking about the people on the other side of what our decisions are. And that really matters, because in District 34, I've been knocking on, I mean, I've lived here, but the point is that I've knocked on doors for months, and you can't walk 4 feet without hearing someone's pain. And that is, how can you sleep at night? Really, how can you sleep at night? Not only are people afraid that they're going to be taken from their homes if they're immigrants, but they're afraid that their children are not going to have opportunities in schools. People who are homeowners are telling me that they can't, strangers telling me that they can't make their mortgage payments because they have incredible taxes that have been raised, or that their health bills are too high. I mean, this is a bigger problem, and I know it affects the national issue as well, but at the state level, people are really suffering, and it's incumbent upon us to fill those needs.
Now I know we have more time, and I know you are on a time limit, so
Yes.
before we do run out, I want, for those who listen, who are hearing you for the first time, that want to know more about you,
Sure.
Website, social media,
Yes.
how can they get in contact
Absolutely. So my website is www.biagi4ny.com.
Right.
Our handle is at biagi4ny.com. That's Biagi, B as in boy, IAGGI, the number 4, and y.com. And I want to just share this because I didn't get a minute to really do this, but I am 4th generation in District 34. I am an attorney. I went to our public schools in Pelham, and I was able to see, right, when a school actually has the resources that it needs, what opportunities it can provide for all of the children in the district. And comparing it to other schools in our district is not only alarming, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. And in addition to understanding the policies and having the relationships and being able to get things done in Albany, what I want to see also is our leaders have an emotional intelligence and have empathy and be able to feel the things that are going on in the district, because the bridging of those two things together is such a powerful way to lead, and it's the way that we're going to be able to transform our state government and honestly the rest of the world. But it starts on the ground, and it's critical. And so a lot of the things that you'll see on my website, the words I've chosen to use are on purpose. They have meaning behind them, because we're not just talking about climate change and criminal justice reform. We're talking about people's lives, right? And so I mentioned this earlier, and it's important to me too. Rikers Island is in this district, and there are bills in the state Senate right now that can make people's lives better, right? We can have end cash bail, have speedy trial reform, have open discovery, and it is alarming to me that I am in this race talking about these issues, not only because Rikers Island is in this district, but because these are issues that are affecting everybody. And I'm running against someone whose name is not even on the cash bail reform bill. That should send a shockwave through the entire state. We should want every single person that we're electing, especially as a Democrat, to be on these bills that we care about. So my biggest ask to all the listeners right now is pick your issue. Whatever issue it is, it could be climate, it could be women's issues, it could be education, it does not matter. And figure out what your elected has done for that specific issue, not only in the past year or the past 2 years, but in the past 10 years, because I'm running against someone who's been a state senator for 14 years, and I think records will prove, right, what the priorities are and what has not been done. And that's really where we're at. How much more can we do? How can we elevate this district in a way that actually brings it forward?
Yeah, I was going to say, Alexandra, that it seems to me one of the most important schisms, if you will, within the Democratic Party is between corporate oriented Democrat elected officials who continue to kind of champion free market policies that make as one of their centerpieces a steady reduction in corporate tax rates, and really has led to a shift in the tax burden. And I wanted to know, where do you stand specifically on the issue of a greater tax equity, such that working class, middle class people are bringing home a greater proportion of their paychecks, and corporations are paying their fair share.
I mean, I'm 100% in agreement with that. I think that the fact that we are putting the burden on our working class and our lower socioeconomic individuals who are literally working paycheck to paycheck and are being taxed sometimes at a higher rate than the millionaires and billionaires because of specific loopholes if they're hedge fund managers is outrageous. And that also extends to corporations. I mean, one of the things that I care very much about is taking money also out of politics, because I think that what happens is you are elected, and if let's say you're elected through, I don't know, whatever special interest it is that you're elected through, that should not dictate the way that you legislate, right? And we have these terms, the corporate Democrats, right? And so it's not to demonize them, but if you look at the records of individuals who are Democrats who've been elected through corporate money, they generally do tend to side with giving tax breaks to corporations, and then really not prioritizing, really is the word, how our tax code and the taxes that we have on our working families across this state affect really all of them, not only at that level, but their children, and what type of world that they are inheriting because of this. It trickles down, right? And it's not a trickle, I'm not talking about trickle down economics. I'm talking about if you tax heavily the working class families, they're not going to be able to save money. And then their children are not going to be able maybe to go to a specific school. And then maybe they get stuck in a specific cycle. And in order to break out of that, right, we have to make sure that our taxes and our tax system is fair. And so that's one of the reasons why I support the SALT relief bill that's in our state Senate, because unfortunately, with the tax bill that Trump has passed, a lot of people in Westchester are going to be hit by this. And we're already seeing it. The taxes are increasing significantly, and people are not going to be able to stay in their homes. And that is very unfortunate, because these are homes that people have not only saved money to live in, but they've been living there for 30 years, and now they have to leave because they can't afford the taxes.
Yeah.
And that we should be ashamed of that as a country. And it's not just in New York, it's across the whole country. And I think what I predict as a young adult is that we are going to see less and less people buy houses. And what's that going to do to the housing market? We're going to see less and less people invest in the market, because they're not going to have money to invest in the market, because they can barely pay whatever bills they have in front of them. And so it's all related, it's all linked, and I just, giving corporations more breaks, I think, is very unfair. There's no really other term for it, unfortunately.
Questions, Lorraine?
I did ask my question.
Okay.
Well, I do want to say, allow me to interject for a minute and say what's up to Damon K. Jones.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Our
Hey, Damon.
our absent co-host who signed in not too long ago, and I can tell you that your answers and philosophy really must have made an impression on Damon, because he's in full agreement that your opponent has got to go, and so lots of people. What you're saying is resonating with a lot of our viewers.
Someone said she's a real go-getter.
And Atif, Mal Vernon, Black Westchester Mal Vernon columnist, he was like, "Oh, who is this? She made me sit up in my seat."
Thank you. I want to just say this. My dad has always said to me, Alessandra, if I was taking something too seriously, he would say, it's not life and death. Nothing is life and death but life and death. But
absolutely, I like that.
Right? And so that's made me have levity in my life. And I'm like, okay, that's not too serious. Like, right? Like, don't cry over spilt milk. But this is life and death for people.
It is.
These decisions are life and death. And if you don't go into this seat and say, someone could be homeless because of a decision that I make. That is alarming. And also that means that every decision we make has got to be made in a way that has that touch to it, that understands. And I feel like right now we have someone representing us who is out of touch, because I'll just take one issue, right? This is the issue that got me into this race, that Reproductive Health Act. In New York State, Roe v. Wade is not the law. Our abortion laws predate Roe v. Wade. I mean, what? It's in the criminal code. And so it's not a matter of if, but when. I know. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's in the penal code. Can you even imagine this? So that's why I thought, when I saw this bill, I thought, this is going to pass. Are you kidding me? And not only did the bill not come out of committee, but it just died in the state Senate. And it died at a time when President Trump passed 3 executive orders trying to attack women's health in many different ways. And he hides it in his little provisions. And so you're trying to find it and you say, oh, here we go again, attacking women's health. So now we have a Supreme Court justice nominee, right, who's come up, who has made pretty clear, I think, that Roe v. Wade is not settled law.
Yes.
And amongst, I can't even imagine what else, right? There's a whole list of things that I'm sure he wants to roll back. That is so dangerous. And what that means is that the federal laws and our federal government are not going to be able to protect us. And guess what does? The state laws, which is why our state laws have to be as strong as possible for all of us across the board, because in New York State, we know we are leaders. This state is a trailblazing state. Everybody looks to us to see what's up with New York. What are you guys going to do? And the fact that we can't get certain basic things right is not only embarrassing, but it means that it's calling for an additional level of leadership that's currently not there. And it also requires accountability and speaking truth to power, which is what I feel like I have been able to do this entire race, and I'm not afraid to do that. You know, like my Italian grandma had a saying. She would say, you know, a good friend in Italian, so it's not going to sound as nice, but that's okay. She would say, you know, a good friend will tell you that you have dirt on your nose, right? And so now you have all these leaders in there. Their noses are filthy, right? And nobody's telling each other like, your nose is dirty over there. They're just like, you're doing great over there. Nice job. Let me help you get this fundraiser. It's not about that. Right? It's like you gotta like speak the truth right now. That's what everybody wants from us, and like that's how we're gonna elevate our government.
You know what's profound about what you said? So when we first started Black Westchester in 2014, and a lot of it was because Damon was doing press conferences and stuff, and they wouldn't show the whole thing. And we did one particular press conference, and
Thank you.
and after the press conference, you know, he sent me the video, and it was 4 black parole officers who went to go get a parolee that got held at gunpoint by the Ramapo Police Department, and they were in full uniform and everything like that. And I basically wrote this big piece, and then I wrote a big moving piece about Memorial Field. And what someone told me, they described what I do, that there was a rich white man in the room, that his fly was open. And nobody was scared and everybody was scared to say it. And I was the first person to say, hey, yo, your fly's open. And then after I said it, everybody's like, yeah, I noticed that it was open. And he said, that's what Black Westchester, when we started, that's exactly what we did when I wrote the first couple of pieces. So I was interested. That's amazing. Interested that you said
but
that.
But that's it, right? Yeah. And that's with everything. Because if you do that in small ways, then you start to do that in a little bit bigger ways.
Okay,
so bit more,
I know I told you I would make sure that you get out of here on time. Last words.
Yes, a last word. So the election's coming up this Thursday, September 13th. And what I would ask of every single voter who is listening is to think about who you want representing you in Albany that you can trust, that will fight like hell for you there to make sure that your basic needs are met, and also that will bring you to the table. What I want to do, because I see this as possible, I want to create a political party, right, in the Democratic Party. I want our Democratic Party to be one that is inclusive, that is diverse, that's compassionate, dare I say the word compassionate, that actually has feeling, right, for what it does for all the people in the state of New York. And I really want to prove that we can take money out of politics and lead by the people. And the way that we do that is we continue to make sure that this movement that we're creating across the country, this is not just in New York State, across the country, continues to stay strong. We continue to organize, not only in the streets, but we continue to organize in the chamber and make sure that no matter what happens, that we stay true to the fact that the political currency of our time will always be us over money, that we are always stronger than the dollars that try to help to get us elected. It's not about the money, and that is where I want to lead from, and that is where I will lead from day one until as long as I'm able to serve the people in District 34.
Damon K. Jones, who is my partner and co-founder of Black Westchester, and who actually started this radio show. He said, "I'm with you," and he said, "Where do I sign up?"
Thank you, Damon. Yeah. We actually have a volunteer. So we have 4 days, right, until the election. If anybody wants to volunteer, biagi4ny.com/volunteer.
There you go.
We could use every single hand. We are people powered. We have 500 volunteers hitting the streets, knocking doors till their knuckles are bleeding, writing postcards, talking to their neighbors, writing letters to the editor, doing everything that they possibly can do. And we have a shoestring budget, truly. And we've been able to grow this movement because of the people, not because of the dollars.
Lastly, if you do win the primary, do you have a a challenger for the general election?
Well, my opponent is running on the independent party line, so
Oh,
we'll see.
okay. So
but
I
yeah.
would welcome you back.
Thank you. I would love
After
to
the
come back.
primary, and I would also send out a challenge that if it comes down to that your opponent come here and challenge you. You know,
I would
y'all
love
have.
that.
I put the offer out there that if you know, we would definitely like to host that.
Great. I would love that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We want to thank you for taking the time
Thank
because I
you.
know your day is busy. I know there's so much to do, especially
I'm
this
honored to
time.
be here.
Thank you.
I've been
man.
looking
So
forward to
sweet.
coming here.
Yeah.
I have been.
Because we booked this like what I don't know how
That's
long
it.
ago.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
A long time ago.
It's like last Sunday before the primary.
That's
That's the one
right.
I want. That's the one I want. Okay.
Exactly. Thank
So,
you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking the time, really, and thank you to all your listeners out there who I can't see, but I know you can hear me, and I can see some of what you're saying. So thank you. Thank you for being aware.
It was a pleasure to have you on the air.
So much.
So I'm gonna edit this for everybody and for you. I'm going to edit the 3 segments separately, so I can send you the video of just your segment and y'all can share it with your people.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
Good luck, Alexander. All right.
So we're coming to that was the last of our guests. This was our Black Westchester, our first pre-primary edition. So we had 3 candidates running in 3 different races. We had New York State Attorney General candidate and the Democratic nominee, Tish James. And last week we had one of her opponents, Alicia Eve. We also had State Senators Andrew Stewart Cousins, who is running for re-election and could be the next majority leader, the first woman and first black woman, I think that was, right? Majority leader, and that could be huge in history making. And we just had Alexandria Biaggi, who was running against Jeff Klein. Now, I didn't really want to put her on the spot, but I said it last week, and I'll say it again. And I've said since it happened, I said all members of the IDC have to go. And I've said that. We posted their names, we posted their pictures, we posted what districts they were in. And I said I wanted to meet all the candidates that running against them. Now, with that said, I vowed that whoever ran against Klein, I would support regardless. But I have had conversations with her. I've heard her speak before this, and I do stand behind. Even if I didn't make that vow, I think she would be an excellent representative for us on the state level. Again, I can't tell you who to vote for, and you need to make your own decisions. But I will be supporting her. So that being said, and Damon said to all of you, great job, y'all.
Well, thank you, Damon.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
We appreciate it, brother.
We tried to hold
Very
it
much.
down.
Filling in your absence.
We tried to
Very
hold
much
it down.
obliged, my
Yeah,
son.
you see, Bob. See, Bob tried to fill your seat, but still in filling your seat, he still asked for the air to go down. Though, and you're the one that turns the air on.
I was
so.
looking at Bob. I was cold, and I was
Yeah,
cold. If I
I'm
was
sitting
freezing,
on
No, I
Hands.
actually was a little cool too. And I said, well, nobody's complaining yet. So I was like, okay, everybody must be comfortable. I'm not going to make everybody uncomfortable. So I left it on until you said, ooh, can we turn that off, please? And I was like, oh, yeah. So, but I just wanted, I did get, we weren't able to get all the candidates.
you did excellent show, AJ. Kudos to you. Congratulations by putting this together. You did
thank
an
you.
amazing job.
Thank you. And I wanted to call out again, and I want to address this again right now. So there was a lot said about a debate between Senator Andrew Stewart Cousins and her opponent Virginia Perez, and I don't want the other side to feel bad. We did reach out. That's all I want to say about it.
Oh, okay.
We've reached out to Virginia Perez several times, and I personally text her. And she said, she was running around doing what she was doing, and she would get back to me, and that never happened. So, just so the other side knows, I did reach out, and I didn't get anything back. That's why you did not see her, because we try to get all the candidates that are willing to come on the show. And I've reached out to her going back to a month ago, And the senator was scheduled a month ago, because I was trying to fill these I was reserving them. Everybody, whoever wanted to be on the guest in the last month could tell you, I told them no, because we were reserving these seats for candidates that are running in the primaries.
That's right.
Other people
I
are like,
know,
but
'cause
just give me
people-
10 minutes. No, if you're not running for, with the exception of last week, that was an important issue, and that was only 10 minutes. But they were the event they were doing, which was Rapicon, was this weekend. Bob and I did stop by. I was late, and because I was working on several things, I missed several people. I see that Lefty and members of the money making mob, I guess, were awarded some kind of. They had some kind of plaque or something. They were there earlier in the day. Shout out to Tri-State Jericho, who I think was DJing earlier in the day. I've seen him there with his cigar, his signature cigar, fat cigar that he always has with him. He took pictures with Andre. And so several other people that I had missed because we got there late. Donna Nolan said, I will be your next guest. Donna, we would love to have you on the show.
You know what?
Anytime,
Why doesn't she?
anytime. Let's talk offline and lock that in today on one of the October dates because I want to get all of these primary candidates in. But going back to the primary is this Thursday.
It's Thursday, September 13th.
This is a very important primary on the local, state, and national level. This is a very important election. I'm not going to tell you who to vote. Just get out and vote. Certain candidates can ease in because of a low turnout. And certain candidates count on
A low turnout.
the low turnout and count on a lot of y'all being frustrated. They're counting on y'all being frustrated. They're counting on y'all not coming out so they can ease back into these positions that they have some of them that got to go. So if you feel that a candidate needs to go, then you need to come out and vote. If you're unhappy on the national level with the way things are, you need to make sure you vote in the national election. If you have a congressional member who has a seat up, you need to get out and vote. This is we were talking, and Bob, I was like, yo, this country's been through everything. We'll bounce back. And Bob said, I'm not really sure if we can just easily bounce back. If you don't go out and vote,
We certainly won't.
and the people that are in power stay in power, there won't be. Atif said, vote or die trying. I like that.
I like that too.
and
Very nice.
and to borrow former President Barack Obama's slogan that he used when he was voting, and he said again, yo, you don't like what's going on? Don't boo, vote. So voting is very, and all my felons that came out of jail and they're not on parole or probation, you can vote. You just had to have registered. You can vote. So don't let nobody tell you that you can't because you're a felon. Everybody, all you young people that have never voted before, and I said this in 2015, they're not, if you don't have services that concern you, and you don't have a lot of things that you feel like your city needs for your age group, you're not going to get them if you don't vote. If you don't vote, there's a reason why those things don't happen. They're not going to happen if you don't go out. You make the difference. You expand the voting pool from this limited pool of voters that vote every time, and people know that they can count on those voters. You change the vote by expanding the voting pool. Barack Obama won some districts by 20, 30 votes and one of those. There was some districts, he said something about that the other day. Some districts, he's proven that every vote does count. He only won by some by 20, 30, and less than 50 votes.
When
So
I
every
ran
vote-
against an incumbent, I beat him by 13.
Wow.
Judge Adrian Armstrong, who was listening. Shout to Atlantic Star member Stephen Lewis on the check-in. Judge Adrian Armstrong initially won that election night by 6 votes.
Right.
That's
I
all it
remember.
was. Then after the other ones were counted, it ended up being something like 40 but 6 votes.
Wow.
He had
It
been
only
on,
takes one
and
vote
there was
to
a lot
win.
of people that wasn't sure about what they were going to do, and he was on the show like a week or 2 before, and he gave a really great interview, and he has thanked us for having him on the show, because he said, there's no way of knowing, but without being here, he could have been down 6-10 votes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, wow.
And the mayoral election in Mount Vernon before this one, Maureen Walker went to sleep up over 100 votes and woke up down 101 votes. You understand what I'm saying? So,
Very
it
narrow
was just
margins.
so they're very narrow margins. And Damon's correcting me. Damon's correcting me again, and I forgot that. You actually can vote in New York even if you're on parole now. That's what
that's
changed.
true.
You had to be off parole to vote before. But even if you're on parole, you can vote now. Thank you, Damon, for reminding that. Shout to Charlie Cahill. Shout to Charles Stern. Another great show, BW. I shared it on my timeline. Thank you, Charles Stern. Go get him, AJ. Atif said. Jesse Van Loo joined in. Donna Nolan, we'll talk offline. Again, Stephen Lewis from Atlantic Star. Anthony Old School Mitchell, always tuned in. The Future Society, thank you all for tuning in. Dion Ski Bridges, thank you for listening. Give a shout out to your pops for us. Robbie Mann was tuned in. Mira Danielle was tuned in. Gail Baxter.
My cousin Pepsi Martinez.
Pepsi, I'm going up the line. I didn't get to
you
it.
see that? Oh, I'm
So
sorry.
Gail Baxter is always tuned in. Dwayne Brown was tuned in. I don't know if he still is. We said D. Wilson. I'm trying to make sure I get all the names. Jennifer Carpenter, former retired Mount Vernon Police Department. I think she retired recently. She tuned in. Again, you said Pepsi Martinez. Your daughter.
Taina.
Hey,
Taina
what's going on? Thank you
Nicole.
for tuning in.
My baby.
And everybody who's tuned in. I mean, we're here because of you. Like elected officials, you vote them in. Your support, you paying attention to us, and you sharing the word about us is the reason we're still here. Nobody listens. I mean, we're talking to ourselves. If nobody's reading Black Westchester, we're writing to ourselves. So I want to thank all the supporters of Black Westchester who respect what we do. Tanya Connors is on the line. Charlie Khalil said, "Hey, Lorraine."
Hey, Charlie.
Janelle Albrighton is on the show. Damon K. Jones, Charles, can you have to come on the show. Damon, Charles Stern, I think that's what he's talking about. Charles Stern, Damon said you have to come on the show. We have got to schedule you. I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. Check out the current issue of Black Westchester. We're in a whole bunch of different spots. There's some spots in Ardsley in Hartsdale, IHOP with Central Avenue, some new spots. Yonkers should be being taken care of this weekend. Thank you to Tasha Diaz. And with that, it's our time. You have tuned in to Black Westchester Presents the People Before Politics radio show every Sunday, 6 to 8, 5 to 8 this week, but going back to 6 to 8 every Sunday on InTheMixRadio.com, giving you real talk for the community for 4 years. Until next week, peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of America.